Hey everyone! What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Fusion Deck User in a different Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 531, Performing Magic Part 1. What a peculiar monster! Madame Vere murmured, eyeing the creature on Hikaru's field in surprise. It actually used the wording "one monster special summoned from the extra deck." Meaning Synchro, Fusion, or even XYZ could all serve as its fusion materials? That would indeed push Fusion one step further. The effect of Edge Imp Chain in the graveyard. When this card is sent from the hand or field to the graveyard, I can add one Frightfur card from my deck to my hand. And right now, Hikaru raised his right hand skyward. Magnum the Reliever's effect activates. What could it be? Every spirit watching the duel leaned in, curious. When another card or effect is activated, I can banish one polymerization or fusion spell from my graveyard, then target one card on the field and destroy it. He was using the power of fusion itself? Hikaru's lips curled as he pointed at Madame Vere. I banish fusion recovery from my graveyard to destroy Witchcrafter Bystreet. Then let it be destroyed. Madame Vere didn't mind in the least. The surrounding alleyway illusion faded, and everyone realized it had never been a field change, merely countless transparent crystals refracting the scene. Whenever another effect goes off, he can chain and destroy a card? Terrific power. He can disrupt the opponent even on their turn, just like Madame Vere. Madame Vere gave a soft snort. Her own ability was far stronger than that. Magnum the Reliever's other effect, once per turn, target one polymerization or fusion spell in your graveyard. Place it on the bottom of the deck, then draw one card. Hikaru lifted the polymerization from his graveyard. The spirits exchanged glances as he calmly slipped it back into his deck and drew. But that alone can't defeat Madame Vere. Haynes sighed from the sidelines. Her DEF equals Magnum's ATK. And she has an even deeper effect. A deeper effect? The surrounding spirits looked at one another, bewildered. Ha, I know. Hikaru chuckled. While Madame Vere is on the field, during damage calculation when a spellcaster battles, she can reveal any number of differently named spell cards in her hand. For each one, that monster gains 1000 ATK in DEF. That's strong? Couldn't her def climb past 6,000 or 7,000? Madame Vere's brows lifted slightly at the words. So Hikaru had a way to handle her field. He studied his hand. He'd filtered so many cards just to find an answer. And now he'd drawn it. Normal spell, instant fusion. Ugh. Madame Vere's face twisted in distaste. She knew exactly which monster was coming the moment she saw that card. The evil god among spellcasters, Thousand Eyes Restrict. Sure enough, Hikaru paid 1000 LP and Thousand Eyes Restrict appeared. He activated its effect, devouring Madame Vere. She casually flipped, leaving a white transparent crystal behind as she was absorbed. Hikaru LP, 4000 3000. Madame Vere shook her head at the sight. To hurt her, he'd willingly dropped 1000 LP, yet gained little. Using instant fusion not only strips away my protection but also adds a fusion spell to the graveyard. Clever, she admitted. However, while Thousand Eyes Restrict is on the field, no other monsters may attack, and monsters special summoned by instant fusion cannot attack. Hikaru nodded, glancing at the two set cards in his back row. For him, the point was to break more locks and drain more of Madame Vere's resources. End turn. At that moment, thanks to instant fusion's lingering effect, the freshly special summoned Thousand Eyes Restrict was destroyed, and Madame Vere herself was sent to the graveyard. She didn't seem bothered. Looking at Hikaru's field, she smiled. Interesting. With a light wave of her hand, a card flew from her deck and hovered before her. Apologies. I hadn't shown proper respect. Allow me to reintroduce myself. I am one of the three sages, the Sage of Crystal, Rilliana. Her aura shifted. Though still a small girl, simply straightening her posture radiated authority, leaving the witchcrafter artisans whispering, was this really their teacher? Still, you must know that to enter the magician domain, strength alone is not enough. She wagged a finger. Yes, you've wounded me, but that is far from sufficient. Only by displaying your own unique style can you earn my Great Sage certification. I will, Hikaru answered calmly. Very well. My turn. Normal summon, Rilliana, the Magistus of Vare. At her gesture, a colossal, pristine crystal descended. A Snow White witch wearing a white pointed hat alighted gracefully upon the ground. Rilliana, the Magistus of Vare Level 4, Light, Spellcaster, ATK 800. Whoa! Oh! This was the true form of the Great Sage. Some novice witchcrafter artisans were seeing their teacher like this for the first time. Even Hain herself had never witnessed this guise. Gone was the usual laziness and apathy, replaced by an aura of holiness. Hikaru raised an eyebrow. Was she switching to a full Magistus strategy? He was mistaken. Nothing of the sort happened. When I am successfully normal or special summoned, I can choose one, add one Magistus spell or trap from my deck to my hand, or return one of my banished level 4 or lower spellcasters to the graveyard. I choose to add a Magistus spell from my deck to my hand. The small girl manipulated the crystalline projection, lifting her left hand lightly as a card shimmered into existence, not from the deck, but from thin air. I add Vare Magic Lacrima of Light to my hand. Vare Magic? Wait, that card isn't. It is also treated as a Magistus or Witchcrafter card by the rules. The spirits gasped in amazement. I activate the spell card, Witchcrafter Holiday. Seeing that Hikaru still made no move, Madame Vare knew she couldn't use Lacrima of Light yet, so she played another card instead. The card's artwork showed her dozing inside the glass atelier until her disciples barged in. This card lets me target one Witchcrafter monster in my graveyard and special summon it. I special summon Witchcrafter Madame Vare. One large, one small. One past, one present. Two monsters, different yet the same, appeared together. Witchcrafter Madame Vare Level 8, Light, Spellcaster, Def 2800. Madame Vare studied the field Hikaru had built and weighed her options. Magnum the Reliever's effect could only be used in response to another card's activation, destroying one card on the field. If she used her own effect to negate Hikaru's monsters, it would simply be destroyed in return, making the negation pointless. So she had to let her opponent activate an effect first, then chain Magnum. Only that sequence worked. I activate the quick play spell, Vare Magic Lacrima of Light. She played the spell she had picked up earlier. Countless transparent crystals began to sparkle across the duel hall. I choose one of its two effects. The second can only be used when my opponent activates an effect, so I'll use the first. When I control a Magistus or Witchcrafter monster, I can send one Spellcaster monster or spell card from my deck to the GY. I send Witchcrafter Patronus to the GY. Now then, my adorable pupils, behold advanced spellcraft. The Witchcrafter apprentices exchanged glances, none sure what she meant. Tiara watched with interest, wondering what advanced technique could warrant such drama. By the effect of Witchcrafter Patronus in my GY, once per turn, I can banish it and one Witchcrafter spell from my GY. This effect becomes the banished spell's activated effect. And I choose the second effect of Vare Magic Lacrima of Light. Wait, what? That can't be right. Doesn't the second effect need an opponent's activation to chain to? The spirits erupted in heated debate. Madame Vare's move sounded like pure nonsense. Tiara blinked and looked at Hikaru. He nodded. It's legal. Same principle as Destiny Hero, Diamond Dude. You've seen it. Understanding dawned on Tiara. Copying an effect duplicates the activation itself. No cost is paid. If it can be activated, it can be used. Crystalline runes floated from her fingers. I banish Lacrima of Light and Patronus to special summon Witchcrafter Shmieta. Shmieta? The apprentices traded puzzled looks. I admit last turn I was careless, a poor examiner, and hastily sent Edel to the GY. I should have chosen better. But now I'm going all out. I activate the spell, Witchcrafter Confusion Confession. The card's artwork showed her original form casually dumping work onto her students, then running off alone. You could tell that Edel had serious complaints about her, while Hain was completely unprepared for suddenly becoming the acting leader. You're a duelist who pursues ultimate fusion, so how about this? Her lips curled upward. The fusion condition is one Witchcrafter monster and one Spellcaster monster. Want to chain? Hikaru thought for a moment, then nodded. Activate Magnum the Reliever's effect. Destroy Madame Vere on your field. Then I chain your activation with my own effect. Discard Witchcrafter Draping to negate the effects of all monsters on your field. Hikaru nodded, no objection. Just like that, Magnum the Reliever banished instant fusion from the GY, about to destroy Madame Vere, only to find itself sealed like an exhibit in a glass bottle. At the same time, Rilliana on the field and Witchcrafter Shmieta fused together. A rather serious-looking spirit appeared on the field, though her left hand was quietly trembling. Ah! Hain on the sidelines couldn't help but gasp. Fusion summon! Witchcrafter Vice Madam! Eehee! She struck a cute pose. Witchcrafter Vice Madam Level 8, Dark, Spellcaster, ATK 2700. Now then, the path is wide open. Madame Vere chuckled softly. Activate the effect of Shmieta in the GY. Banish her to send Witchcrafter Pittor from the deck to the GY. And at this moment, the Vice Grand Hain's effect activates. Don't deliberately emphasize grand. Hain was quite displeased. When the effect of a spellcaster monster or spell card, other than the fusion monsters, is activated, I can choose one of her effects to activate. And amazingly, she has a full 3 effects. I first activate the third effect, return one Witchcrafter spell or trap from the GY to my hand. She leisurely picked up Witchcrafter Creation. Then, activate the effect of Pittor in the GY. Banish her, and I draw one card. After that, I send one Witchcrafter card from my hand to the GY. If I have no Witchcrafter cards in my hand, my entire hand is banished. She had a Witchcrafter card in hand, of course. Oh, and don't forget, at this moment I can also activate Vice Madam's effect to destroy one card on your field. I'll destroy that Magnum the Reliever. She drew a card and glanced down at it. Discard Witchcrafter Demonstration. Then, lastly, activate the spell card Witchcrafter Creation. Add Witchcrafter Edel from my deck to my hand. And naturally, I can activate Vice Madam's effect once again. Special summon one level 6 or lower Witchcrafter monster from my deck. Come on out, let me see how your magical training's been going, Aruru. Witchcrafter Edel level 5, Light, Spellcaster, ATK 2000. A dazzling chain of spells flashed before their eyes. The spirits watching this scene could only feel utterly amazed. A single monster, activating 3 effects, encompassing recovery, destruction, and support. Not only did it clear Hikaru's field, but her effects could also activate during the opponent's turn for the same kind of support. At this rate, all she had to do was attack directly and she'd win. Well then, I suppose I'll perform some magic of my own. Madame Vere didn't understand what he meant. During your main phase, I activate this card's effect from my hand. Edge Imp Sai. What? Everyone exchanged bewildered looks, not understanding Hikaru's move. Why suddenly reveal a monster at a time like this? During the opponent's main phase, reveal this card in your hand to activate. From your hand and field, send the fusion materials listed on a Frightfur fusion monster, including this card, to the GY, and fusion summon one fusion monster. What? A direct hand fusion. And on the opponent's turn? Slash. A giant side spiraled down from the sky. Behind Hikaru, an enormous squid-like form suddenly materialized. That was no ordinary squid. It was an earthbound immortal. Hikaru hadn't been idle during this time. Since the Frightfur dimension had been modified by Tiara to allow reincarnation, Hikaru naturally intended to leverage that advantage. While it wasn't a direct reincarnation, it could at least pass for an outsider. The fusion condition is one Edgeimp monster and one Fluffle. Hikaru flipped over his second card. I fuse Fluffle Penguin and Edgeimp side. Fusion summon. Frightfur Kraken. A massive, absurdly oversized squid toy appeared behind Hikaru. Then, with several squelching sounds, sides pierced through its body, transforming into tentacles that slammed onto the ground. Frightfur Kraken Level 8, Water, Fiend, ATK 2200. Fluffle Penguin's effect, draw 2 cards, discard 1. Hikaru cycled through his hand once more. Madame Vere looked at this monster, then back at Hikaru. Is that toy even legal? But aside from her incredulity, she still had to focus on the duel. ATK 2200, Def 3000, was it? She hesitated for a moment, then decided she still had to attack. Battle. Vice Madam, attack. Even if it was in defense position, she had to attack. She couldn't just leave this bizarre monster sitting there, could she? It was clearly not a normal monster. Before that, activate trap card, Magical Hats. Activate during the opponent's battle phase. Select 2 spell or trap cards from the deck, treat them as normal monsters, and mix them together with 1 monster on my field, setting all 3 face down in defense position. Cards special summoned by this effect from the deck cannot exist outside the battle phase and are destroyed at the end of the battle phase. Hikaru pulled Metalfoes Fusion, which had been sent to the GY last turn, and Fusion Substitute from his deck, setting them on the field. At the same time, the Frightfur monster burrowed into one of the cards. Madame Vere saw this and vaguely had a suspicion, but couldn't quite figure out what was happening. Then, quick play spell, Flash Fusion. Destroy fusion materials on my field that are listed on a fusion monster, and fusion summon 1 fusion monster from my extra deck. The monster special summoned by this effect can only attack monsters special summoned from the extra deck, and is unaffected by effects activated by other monsters special summoned from the extra deck. More fusion? But on your field, Madame Vere suddenly realized. At that moment, she understood what Hikaru had meant by performing magic. Interesting. What can he fusion summon from that? Yeah, what is this? Despite having already witnessed many of Hikaru's fusions, the spirits still didn't understand what he was trying to do. Because the monsters special summoned by magical hats are treated as normal monsters, and their names are their original card names. Tiara suddenly took interest, explaining to the nearby spirits. In other words, what Hikaru has on his field are monster cards named Metalfoes Fusion and Fusion Substitute. That's right. I fuse Metalfoes Fusion in Fusion Substitute. Fusion Summon. Full Metalfoes Alcest. Full Metalfoes Alcest Level 1, Fire, Psychic, Def 0. Whoa! The Witchcrafters collectively shrieked. Originally, seeing their master use copy a spell to completely bypass its conditions had already shocked them, but now Hikaru had performed a fusion using Fusion Ultracool Fusion. Haine felt her hands trembling. Because she was watching this scene at extremely close range, face to face, the impact and shock she received was undoubtedly stronger. She almost instantly realized that she could also fuse a Witchcrafter spell card with any random spellcaster monster. This was too cool. Whoa! As expected of the absolute fusion wielder. As expected of the pinnacle of fusion, Hikaru. That was way too cool. I never expected that when I came to order a custom gift today, I'd get to see a duel like this. Totally worth it no matter what. Hikaru didn't stop his play. He pointed at Haine. Activate Full Metalfoes Alcest's effect. Once per opponent's turn, target 1 effect monster on the field. That effect monster is equipped to this card. It was an effect similar to Thousand Eyes Restrict. But you're choosing me? Not master? Hane pointed at herself in disbelief. Then, she excitedly ran straight over, instantly arriving at Hikaru's side of the field, greeting Hikaru and curiously asking about the fusion using fusion concept, exclaiming that his approach was incredible. She had zero hesitation about running to the opponent's field during a duel. After all, her master screwed her over far too often on a daily basis. By the time Madame Vere snapped out of her amazement over the fusion using fusion and prepared to use Golem Aruru's effect in her hand to deal with the situation, she was shocked to discover that Hane had already run to the other side. Hikaru was also a bit surprised. At this point, Golem Aruru's effect, when a spellcaster you control becomes the target of an opponent's effect or is selected as an attack target by an opponent's monster. You can target one card on the opponent's field or one Witchcrafter spell in your GY, special summon this card, and return that card to its owner's hand. Could have directly dealt with Alcest or the Kraken. He had originally planned to gamble on her bouncing the Kraken, which would leave him plenty of room to work with next turn. Madame Vere rubbed the bridge of her nose. She was just too tired, and the fusion using fusion had genuinely caught her off guard. Of course, there was also the matter that Hane had run over too fast. By the time she came to her senses, she had already missed her activation window. But it wasn't a serious problem. As long as she battle-destroyed Alcest, she could use Edel's effect to tribute herself and revive Hane from the GY. Not difficult at all. Alcest's death increases by the ATK of the monster equipped to it by its effect. Full Metalfo's Alcest DF, 02700. The DEF now exceeded Edel's ATK, but the problem wasn't severe. She still had a spell card in hand, Witchcrafter Scroll, which could boost Edel's ATK by 1000, enough to destroy the monster. But what she really wanted to do was use Golem Aruru's effect to special summon it and deal with that bizarre toy. Although she didn't know its effects, that giant toy was just too suspicious. The purple witch swung her massive artisan's hammer, bringing it down on Alcest. However. Sorry, Madame Vere. Hikaru flipped over the card in his hand. According to his original plan, as long as he could bait Madame Vere into bouncing the Kraken, keep Alcest on the field, and deal with Hane, then no matter what the opponent attacked with, he could use the Dark Kuriboh that Jaden had given him to protect his field. But he had just drawn something else unexpectedly. I happened to draw Alistair. It was from Fluffle Penguin's draw effect. Madame Vere remembered. Damn it, that good-for-nothing idiot. Alistair could boost the ATK and def of a fusion monster on the field by 1000. It collided perfectly head-on with her boost. Madame Vere LP, 3300. Chapter 532, Performing Magic Part 2. Madame Vere resignedly placed the scroll in her hand onto the field, then said, "At the end of my turn, the spell cards in my GY will activate their effects. Besides the ones that weren't activated this turn, they can return to my hand. And Witchcrafter Bystreet, when it exists in the GY while I control a Witchcrafter monster, can be placed directly in my spell and trap zone." She recovered a large number of spells, and the crystals around them once again reflected the alley's scenery. My turn, draw. Hikaru glanced at his hand. First, activate the effects of Fusion Substitute and Metalfoes Fusion in the GY. Return Frightfur Tiger to my extra deck, draw one card. Return Metalfoes Fusion to my deck, shuffle, draw one card. Free fusions, dealt with Hane, and even drew cards. It could truly be called magic. Madame Vere nodded to herself internally. But getting past her field wouldn't be that simple. She could negate all of her opponent's monster effects once per turn. Bystreet could ensure that each of her monsters wouldn't be destroyed once per turn. And even if Hikaru used some effect that simultaneously destroyed spells and monsters, due to how ruling logic worked, only Bystreet would be destroyed. Finally, although she had been too startled and Hane had run over too fast for her to use Golem Aruru's effect, next turn she could still use Aruru for protection. She could also use the Aruru in her hand to defend against attacks and even remove Hikaru's field presence along the way. Golem Aruru in hand, when a spellcaster you control becomes the target of an opponent's effect or is selected as an attack target, target one card on the opponent's field or one witchcrafter spell in your GY, special summon this card, and return that card to its owner's hand. Truly all-around defense. I flip Kraken face up. The massive, sky-blotting squid flipped over. Frightfur Kraken's effect. Once per turn, target one monster on the opponent's field. Send that monster to the GY. This turn, this card cannot attack directly. I send the scroll on my field to the GY to negate the effects of all your monsters. Boom. Hayne, who had been carefully asking Tiara about various magical knowledge and feeling like she'd struck gold, turned around and found herself already back on the Witchcrafter workshop side. Hayne were still in a duel, Madame Vere couldn't help but call out her name. Hayne jumped in fright and hurriedly hid to one side. With that, everything should be fine. Next turn, she'd revive Hayne, and with all the resources she'd recovered, winning the duel wouldn't be a problem. He played very well. Truly an exceptional duelist. His understanding of fusion and his innovations during the duel had amazed even her. No wonder Alistair thought so highly of this kid. But although you're excellent, although you're impressive, even if I was absent-minded on my first turn, even if I'm dead tired, I'm not that easy to beat. I'm one of the three sages. The three sages. But, given that you performed so many novel, innovative, and astonishing fusions, I'll pass you on this certification. After all, I ended up using Rilliana and Vare magic, which theoretically shouldn't be used in a trial. Let's just leave it at that. Crowley and the others won't know anyway, hee. But then, Hikaru wanted to push even further. Activate Frightfur Patchwork. I add Edgimp Sabers and Polymerization from my deck to my hand. Activate Polymerization. Fuse Edgimp Sabers and Fluffle Owl. Fusion Summon, Frightfur Wolf. Awoo. A toy wolf appeared on the field. Frightfur Wolf level 6, Dark Fiend, ATK 2000. Frightfur Wolf? Not Frightfur Tiger this time? But what purpose did this serve? Then Hikaru looked at Frightfur Kraken. The squid didn't care, nodding along. Being able to breathe normally, come out and stretch her legs, was already rare enough. Dueling still had to be taken seriously. Hikaru looked at Alcest, and Alcest patted its chest proudly, as if honored to be part of this. Alright. Then, I release Full Metalfo's Alcest and Frightfur Kraken on my field as tributes. Ha! Everyone was stunned. Tribute Summon. Dark Magician. Ha! The Crimson, Supreme Magician made his dazzling entrance. Dark Magician level 7, Dark, Spellcaster, ATK 2500. Dark Magician? A tribute summon? Madame Vere's jaw dropped. Then, Fusion Spell, the Eye of Timaeus. This was a legendary dragon? Just how many surprises did this kid have? Madame Vere finally, completely understood why Hikaru had such immense popularity, why so many spirits adored him, and why even Alistair had praised him. Using one Dark Magician on my field as material, Fusion Summon one fusion monster that lists Dark Magician as fusion material. I Fusion Summon Dark Magician the Dragon Knight, no. Amulet Dragon, no. I Fusion Summon Master of Chaos. The Warrior of Chaos swung aside shield and sword, descending onto the field once more. When Master of Chaos is fusion summoned, I can target one light or dark monster in my GY and special summon it. Magnum the Reliever. The Horned Fusion Fiend reappeared. Beginning with fusion, returning to fusion. Madame Vere applauded with both hands. Beautiful. This was precisely a situation that her hand, her field, her everything could not handle. Hikaru hadn't come to this duel unprepared. On the contrary, he had anticipated this exact scenario, which was why he used these tactics, step by step working to banish her cards. So that was it. Release the water and fire attribute monsters, keep the dark, and assemble the pre-prepared light. extra deck fusions, opponent's turn hand fusions, fusing with fusions, fusion recycling, single material fusions, both players' GY fusions, and most importantly, unwavering faith in fusion, truly beautiful. Oh my, oh my. She yawned. Using invocation to banish Alistair and a monster from the GY diffusion summon and invoked, any of them would be enough to reduce her LP to 0, because she had no means to survive the damage. Even without doing that, invocation could return itself to the deck from the GY and recover the banished Alistair, at which point Alistair boosting Master of Chaos's ATK by 1000 would be equally unstoppable. She'd lost, and she certainly wouldn't make excuses about not being serious on the first turn. One soul guides the light, one soul guides the darkness. Master of Chaos effect, release one light and one dark monster on the field, and banish all monsters on the opponent's field. While she was still thinking, Hikaru had already completed exactly the sequence she'd imagined. Familiar, classic, yet brimming with novelty in its entirely new combinations. Swoosh. The world split in two like the pages of a manga. On the left stood Hikaru and his allies, on the right, beneath the cut paper, were Madame Vere and Adele. Then, Master of Chaos attacks directly. Hikaru immediately discarded the Alistair he'd recovered via invocation, boosting Master of Chaos's ATK to 4000. Master of Chaos leapt lightly, slashing his swords across the manga-like canvas. As the paper shattered, the crystals around Madame Vere cracked along corresponding fractures. Almost instantly, the glass sofa beneath her shattered, and she fell straight down, landing with a solid thud. Madame Vere LP, 3300. Chapter 533, Witchcraft Chaos Fusion Part 1. As expected of the GX champion. Incredible, I feel like I've gained a whole new understanding of fusion. Miss Blacksmith, could you retool my blade toward a fusion focus? It seems way more interesting over there. As the duel ended, the spirits watching from around the workshop snapped back to attention, each reacting in their own way. Some placed orders, some praised the witchcrafter artisanship, and others marveled at Hikaru's skill. Hikaru looked up at the sky. It had only been a moment, but in that brief instant, the light of destruction had unmistakably appeared. The light of destruction had never granted Hikaru the power of a herald, but it had used its own power to repair his body, provided him with a vast number of cards, and constructed a physical form for Tiara. Before the GX tournament, Hikaru had taken samples of that power and given them to magical scientists for research. That endlessly fusion-curious spirit of the science faction had labored through countless days and nights, and finally succeeded in creating the card Magnum the Reliever. However, a card conjured from nothing required the approval of either the spirit or the original owner of that power. Just as when Hikaru had first tried to use El Shaddol Winda. Only this time, the original owner was somewhat large in stature. Evidently, after all this time, the light of destruction was still pondering the meaning of life, so when it suddenly detected an unfamiliar force drawing on its power, it was quite surprised and came to take a look. However, upon seeing it was Hikaru, it simply left. In other words, magical scientist could research to its heart's content. Oh, right, Hikaru. That cosmic god didn't want to interfere with your duel, so it left a couple of messages before going. Tiara spoke up once the duel was over. Oh. It finally clicked for Hikaru. He'd thought it was unlike the light of destruction to just glance and walk away. Sure enough, it had left words behind. The light of destruction had examined Magnum's effects, one that returned a fusion card and drew, and another that banished a fusion card to destroy, and found them both surprising and deeply satisfying. They represented that, even after that fateful day, Hikaru still held firm to the philosophy he had declared. Destruction and rebirth. This gave the light of destruction entirely new inspiration, so it granted Hikaru carte blanche to experiment however he pleased. Now Hikaru could relax. With that settled, he turned to face the other side. Amid the spirits' lively discussion, Cendrillon had already raised her staff and was tracing a magic circle in the air. She produced a card imprinted with Hikaru's likeness, and it flew into his hands. Hikaru caught the card and touched the two other seals tucked against his chest. One for Endymion, one for Spellbook Academy, and now this one for Witchcrafter Bystreet, all three proofs of the three sages were finally assembled. Hikaru took a deep breath. He needed to hurry to Domino City next and wouldn't have time to visit the magician's domain, but at the very least, the opportunity was now secured. Meanwhile, on the Witchcrafter side, two spirits had started bickering. "Hane, you brat, why did you rush over to the other side so fast last turn? I could have chained my effect. What are you going on about? I stayed on our side for ages. The whole fusion thing caught me off guard too, and by the time I came to my senses, you'd already missed your activation window. Unlike the world Hikaru came from, this world didn't let you wait forever to decide whether to chain an effect. Missed the window, and it was gone. That was precisely why Duel Academy trained students in reaction time and physical conditioning." Hane pressed her advantage. "Besides, a loss is a loss. What excuses are you making?" "Ha! I lost, sure, but I wasn't even going all out. If I'd been serious from the first turn, there's no way that human could have come through so smoothly." She waved her arms in front of Hane, trying to assert her authority as the master. "If I'd wanted to, I could have assembled the normal forms of both you and me on turn 1. Hikaru wouldn't have been able to win like that. Your confidence is admirable, but master, Hikaru wasn't serious on turn 1 either. If instead of experimenting with Magnum, he'd gone straight into fusing Hook Squid, sent you to the graveyard, casually summoned another monster, and attacked directly, what would you have done? It's precisely because you weren't serious that Hikaru could only test new things and wait for you to get serious." Hane rebutted Sendrilin's words as if she were a detached observer. "Most importantly, master, you even resorted to crystallization magic. That's not a card that belongs in a trial. If you're going to claim that, you might as well go all the way and use the Grand Sage form. Forget our Witchcrafter artistry entirely. Then you'd truly be going all out." Sendrilin's head gradually drooped, feeling she couldn't quite out-argue her own apprentice. "Who's the faction leader here, exactly? If you took your responsibilities more seriously, I'd certainly show you proper respect." Hane let out a sigh. Sendrilin brushed off her rear somewhat helplessly, cleared away the dust, rose into the air, and settled onto a crystal glass platform that materialized out of nowhere, floating over to Hikaru. "Hey there, little Hikaru," she greeted with a wave. "I've heard all about you from Crowley, but this is the first time we've met in person." Hikaru returned the greeting. Then, curiosity getting the better of him, he asked whether she knew anything about Professor Banner. At the mention of Banner, she nodded, indicating she was well aware. Banner's reincarnation was, in fact, connected to all three of the sages. "Since you've gathered all three proofs of the three sages, it's about time." Sendrilin reconsidered, decided the moment was right, and began to explain. As one of the founders of Secret Village of the Spellcasters, and one of the most ancient spellcaster spirits, she, alongside Crowley and Endymion, had inherited the title of Archetype Legends and were known among spirits as the Three Sages, among the closest beings to the original archetypes themselves. The three had always collaborated, sharing their understanding of magic within the Secret Village and jointly managing the spellcaster's home base. But then, on that day, a sinister red light had suddenly pierced through the entire spirit world. In the instant invisible to ordinary spirits and humans, every top-tier spirit had simultaneously witnessed that beam of light. Immediately afterward, the entire spirit world began to crumble and fragment. The three sages each used their own power to maintain a single dimension, their respective magic factions. To protect those factions, they reduced how often they met, visited the secret village less frequently, and instead convened in the more stable and more powerful magician's domain to discuss matters. In short, the moment they realized that ordinary spirits hadn't even noticed the catastrophe, hadn't been aware of it at all, the being behind that light had already torn the world apart. They instantly grasped the terror of that unknown enemy. So from that point on, they began their exploration and research. After all, though that light had flashed only once, no one could guarantee it wouldn't appear again, nor could anyone promise that next time, it wouldn't be directed at living beings. To that end, the three sages had actually been working tirelessly for decades, seeking every possible countermeasure. During one of his journeys, Crowley had discovered Banner, an alchemist of a generation, and was immediately awestruck. He introduced Banner to the others, and it was then that Endymion revealed something the other two hadn't noticed. The mastermind behind the scenes possessed the power to control souls. It had converted some fallen, powerful spirits into other forms of life. No one knew how this happened, nor what consequences the transformation carried, but should an alchemist of Banner's caliber die, there was no telling what might occur. It was precisely for this reason that Banner, already aware at the time that he didn't have long to live, had begun planning his reincarnation as a spirit. The fracturing of the spirit world is something nearly every spirit knows about. But the number of spirits who truly understand how terrifying it was, who realize that our future will inevitably pit us against an existence beyond imagination, is vanishingly small. Inside the workshop, Sendrillon explained these secrets and research to Hikaru. Over these years, they had been steadily uncovering traces of the mastermind, gradually coming into contact with certain forces under that being's command. It was precisely because this task was so incredibly difficult and dangerous that supreme-tier spirits like Ver were perpetually overworked. Only the truly apex-level spirits, like the dragon god of the dark world who couldn't care less about the world's survival, were completely indifferent to it all. Now, since you've already earned the recognition of the three sages and may step into the spellcaster's domain, you'll inevitably have to deal with this matter going forward, and even track down that Shatterer's whereabouts. If that's the case, maybe I can finally take it easy. Sleep in at the workshop every day. Chapter 534, Witchcraft Chaos Fusion Part 2. Hikaru smiled awkwardly from the side. The black hand behind the spirit world's fracturing. Indeed, Hikaru had always kept this matter in mind, yet had never uncovered even a hint of a lead. He had tried asking Light of Ruin whether it had any connection to this affair, but it had calmly informed him that the entity responsible for splitting the spirit world was absolutely someone else entirely, and in all likelihood had no connection to the human world whatsoever, being some primordial, native existence from within the spirit world itself. This left Hikaru in a bind. After all, the spirit world was not some single planet or single world. What people called the spirit world was vastly larger than any planet in human comprehension. It even surpassed what humans conventionally understood as the universe. Chaos warriors, for instance, possessed the power to recreate chaos and birth entire universes. A single spirit world was incomprehensibly larger than anything in the human frame of reference. Under such circumstances, if some primordial spirit suddenly decided to stir up trouble, to suddenly desire the destruction of the world, that was simply not something he could deduce through imagination alone. Setting aside practical considerations, each and every one of these archetype-level spirits was a world-ending, heaven-shattering force in their own right. Just like the witchcrafter Madame Ver standing before him now. Though she was not a true original in the way the primordial chaos warrior was within the warrior domain, how great the difference truly was between her and the original, that was difficult to say. Yet, she was clearly still quite different from the archetype in many respects. On one hand, though she slacked off and goofed around, she was evidently not someone who truly did nothing. When a real problem arose, she was quite responsible. On the other hand, while she would indeed handle things seriously when needed, the moment someone else could do the work in her place, she would immediately drop everything and do absolutely nothing. Why else would she say something like, "Maybe I can finally sleep in every day"? Somewhat decent, but not by much. Still a deadbeat spirit. In any case, after learning from Ver about the many trials and hardships the spirit world faced, the dangers unknown to ordinary spirits, and even the coordinates of several hazardous dimensions, Hikaru bid farewell and prepared to leave. He hadn't gone far after departing when he suddenly felt the card case at his hip light up with a faint glow. Somewhat surprised, he opened the case. On the other side, Ver had been slumped across the workshop table for a long while when she suddenly called out, "Hain? Hain?" But no matter how many times she called, there was no response, and a faint, uneasy feeling began to creep over her. Bang! Suddenly, the workshop door was flung wide open, and two girls, one with red hair, one with purple, burst into the room, crying out in alarm as they rushed toward Ver. This is bad, madam." Hain left this behind and disappeared. "Ha! Ver leapt straight up in shock, snatched the piece of paper, and quickly scanned it. To Madam, with respect, I secretly overheard your conversation with Mr. Hikaru, and have come to deeply understand that you have not truly been wandering about aimlessly during this period, but have in fact been working diligently, profoundly reflecting upon your past mistakes and resolving to discipline yourself as penance. You gave Mr. Hikaru the coordinates to several other dimensions, which I imagine was your way of hoping he would explore those places and report back to you with his findings, yes? If that is the case, as your apprentice, it is only right that I help you accomplish this task, and so I have decided to accompany Mr. Hikaru on his adventure. This way, I may share your burdens. It shall also serve as punishment for my own doubts and distrust of you. Your apprentice, Witchcrafter Hayne. The two senior witchcrafters stood to the side, and having read the letter's contents, could not help but admire inwardly. Hayne really has inherited Madam's true teachings. She's even mastered Madam's signature move. That's right, this was Ver's one and only, most closely guarded secret art, the art of slacking off and making a run for it. Ver's mouth seemed to twist out of shape, her eyes drifting unfocused, as though she could already see Hayne imitating her own habit of scratching the back of her head and sticking out her tongue. She was furious. How dare you use my technique against me, Hayne? But after fuming for a stretch, she suddenly grew calm again. Fine then. Little Hayne, at the very least, this duelist was genuinely fascinating. He used an extraordinary variety of fusion monsters, and with the likes of Alls around too, it should give her plenty of opportunities to show what she was made of. The child needs to grow up sometime. So then, Madam, about the orders. Ver turned to look at the towering stack of orders beside her, half a person's height of thick, heavy parchment, all accumulated on impulse from watching those duels, and her pupils shook with dawning horror. All of this falls to me to manage? Me? This is way too much trouble, I absolutely refuse to deal with this. Her mouth twitched slightly. After a long moment, she screamed at the top of her lungs, "Get back here! Get back here right now, Hayne!" But at that very moment, Hikaru had already finished his conversation with Witchcrafter Hayne and was warmly welcoming her to join his team. He was already introducing her to the workshop members. Who had time to think about Madam? Madam? Not a concern. Chapter 535. Land of Legends Part 1. Hikaru was, of course, happy to welcome Hayne. Not only was she a long overdue new member of the Cosmo Workshop, but setting aside the divine spirits who couldn't be shown to just anyone, Hayne was one of the few spirits to join Hikaru's team in the past several months. She could not only fusion summon Witchcrafter Vice Madam, a relatively powerful fusion monster, but her own on-field effect was extremely valuable to Hikaru as well. As long as Witchcrafter Hayne was on the field, other spellcaster monsters he controlled couldn't be targeted by effects. That was actually quite impressive, because Hikaru's most commonly used spellcaster monster was El Shaddol Winda. While effect targeting protection alone wasn't overwhelming, a 2200 ATK monster that couldn't be destroyed by effects, couldn't be targeted by effects, and even locked down special summons? That was an entirely different beast. Not to mention, Hayne herself also had the ability to discard a spell card from her hand during the opponent's turn and destroy one card on the opponent's field. Hikaru's deck, whatever else it might lack, certainly didn't run short on spell cards. As for her fusion form, Witchcrafter Vice Madam could also destroy cards and even recover a Witchcrafter spell. Although Hikaru only had one copy of Witchcrafter Confusion Confession on hand, that actually worked out perfectly. Because Witchcrafter Confusion Confession wasn't restricted to summoning only Witchcrafter fusion monsters. It only required one Witchcrafter monster as fusion material during the fusion summon, so the possibilities for fusion were quite broad. For instance, directly fusing into El Shaddol Winda, or doing what he'd just done and fusing Magnum the Reliever. Both were entirely feasible. Beyond the card effects themselves, Hayne was also the officially recognized deputy representative of Witchcrafter Bystreet and the second in command of the entire Witchcrafter faction. And since Sendrillin perpetually neglected managing the faction, the work, and the projects, Hayne was actually the one best at coordination. On top of that, her Witchcrafter artisanship was superb. She could help with many tasks inside Hikaru's workshop. However, considering that she seemed to have deliberately left home, wanting Sendralan to properly fulfill her duties as master while also secretly trying to snag herself a little vacation, Hikaru didn't ask her to help out just yet. Let her relax first. There'd be time for work later. He didn't mind having someone coast for a while, especially since Hain was actually wonderful with people, had excellent talent in craftsmanship, and her gem working skills could even help Crystal and Lapis fine-tune gemstone performance. That was seriously impressive. As expected of a spirit faction that specialized in gemstone research. In any case, though Hikaru hadn't asked for her help, Hain still took it upon herself with a diligent, responsible attitude to run a diagnostic check on Lapis's condition. Crystal paced back and forth nearby, looking extremely nervous. Her physical condition was absurdly good. Hain took one look at the data and left it at that, because she could tell Crystal's development was perfectly stable. But Lapis was a different story. Compared to the tall Crystal, Lapis's body appeared very small. Many spirits living in the Cosmo workshop didn't even know that the El Shad doll construct in Hikaru's hand was actually her fusion form. But beyond construct, there was absolutely nothing. Yes, it sounded strange, but that was precisely what made it eerie. Because, up until now, Hikaru had never obtained any of the Gem Knight Lady series fusion monsters. It was as if something was missing. In her daily life, unlike other spirits, Lapis was not only poor with words but also extremely shy around strangers. Apart from occasionally treating injured spirits, she almost never left the workshop grounds. She was remarkably quiet, even reclusive. Crystal likely felt Lapis wasn't comfortable with the outside world, so when they'd found the dual-terminal spirit world some time ago, she had considered finding the Gem Knight Order and bringing Lapis back there. Hikaru never quite understood what Lapis was thinking either, but he never forced his spirits to follow his own train of thought, so he didn't mind. Her body should have been fine. After all, Hikaru had asked Tiara about it several times, and every time, Tiara would impatiently reply that there was nothing wrong. After a simple examination, Hain, as a professional in gem craftsmanship, slowly nodded. I see. She and Lapis locked eyes. Lapis gently shifted her gaze. Hain hesitated for a moment, then leaned close to Lapis and whispered something by her ear. Only after receiving Lapis's permission did Hain nod and share the specifics of Lapis's condition with Hikaru. It was actually quite simple. Just as the witchcrafter artisans could harness gemstones, extract different energies, and then craft corresponding accessories and weapons to prepare spirits for evolution or transformation, Lapis had also undergone such a process. Only, it hadn't been voluntary. Forced to absorb an enormous amount of Shad doll power, she had been involuntarily converted into El Shad doll construct. Later, all that pain and torment was absorbed by Crystal, who then evolved into El Shad doll Grista. But Lapis's own body had long since stabilized in the direction of Shad doll. Hearing this, Tiara rubbed her chin and looked at Hikaru. Hikaru met her gaze and nodded, the realization clicking into place. In fact, after previously crafting components for Tiara's body and creating Infernoid Divinity, it hadn't taken Hikaru long at all to then produce an El Shad doll Anno Utilis. At the time, he'd assumed it was simply because Divinity had been born into this world, and therefore the Shad doll series could now include an additional El Shad doll fusion. He hadn't thought much of it. Looking back now, the reason it had gone so smoothly was actually connected, at least in part, to Lapis. It wasn't that she didn't acknowledge or accept Hikaru's fusion. On the contrary, she had been quietly supporting him all along. She simply had no capacity to do anything more beyond that. These were the kinds of things only a specialist spirit could recognize. Even Tiara hadn't known beforehand and could only shrug in the dark. If not for Hain's arrival, Hikaru might have gone a long time without ever understanding the reason. After consulting Lapis's wishes, Hain thumped her own chest and gave Hikaru and Crystal her assurance. This sort of thing was exactly her professional specialty, and she would absolutely design a plan everyone could accept. Thank you so much. Captain Crystal bowed respectfully to the witch. Hikaru also smiled and thanked Hain, praising her for solving a major puzzle the moment she arrived. Oh my, compared to the messes Master dumps on me, this is nothing. Hane clasped her hands behind her back a little bashfully, head lowered, tracing circles on the ground with the toe of her shoe. After about 7 or 8 seconds, she added that she would work with Lapis together to study the issue. All in all, Hane was responsible, professionally skilled, pleasant to be around, and as one of the few approachable-looking spirits on Hikaru's side, she was exactly what Lapis needed to feel less alone and to have someone to talk to. It was clear that Lapis actually had plenty she wanted to say. She just hadn't had anyone to confide in before. Crystal hovered over her like a protective guardian, so within no time of getting to know Hane, Lapis was already spilling all sorts of little secrets about the Cosmo Workshop. Like the ancient god hidden in darkness, or the fierce-looking dragon from the synchro dimension that was actually a fusion creature, or the evil god disguised as a toy, and this and that and the other. Most importantly, of course, was her. The Winda at Hikaru's side. Her outward appearance was just a disguise. In truth, she was an incredibly powerful existence, a god of star creation, and the real overseer of the entire Cosmo Workshop. Even Flame Swordsman and the rest answered to her. Before, all these spirits had only known to address her as Your Highness or Lady Winda. It was only recently, when they witnessed Hikaru Fusion summon her true form, that they finally learned her name. Lapis whispered it to Hane in secret. All these things that outsiders and ordinary spirits had no idea about, Lapis had been quietly observing all along. But since she'd had no one to talk to before, it had all been bottled up inside. Now that she had a new friend, everything came tumbling out at once, earning her those wide-eyed, awestruck looks of admiration from Hane. Seeing them getting along so happily, Hikaru felt at ease. As the Cosmo Workshop continued to grow in numbers, and as its cooperation with the Allied forces deepened and its direct link to the Frightfur dimension opened up, the workshop had become increasingly lively. From time to time, spirits with special connections and referrals even made their way to this dimension to trade cards with the Cosmo Workshop's Master of All Fusions. It was precisely because the number of spirits kept growing that Hikaru had started worrying whether newly joined spirits would have trouble adjusting. The Earthbound gods were fine, honestly. They were just looking for a new place to settle down and didn't even mind the noise. Being awake and unshackled was the greatest gift they could ask for. And the sacred beasts had finally gotten their revenge, so they weren't asking for much either. They and the Earthbound gods were brothers in hardship, and peace of mind was all that mattered. But for an ordinary spirit like Hane, it was genuinely hard to say. Fortunately, she seemed to be getting along just fine. Chapter 536, Land of Legends Part 2. Hikaru stayed in the workshop for 2 days, figuring the media frenzy should have died down by now. But the moment he stepped out of the fusion division, he found the island still crawling with reporters and people wanting to see him. Thankfully, with alchemy to assist him, he could dodge their tracking. Luckily, the Funlo Corporation also knew Hikaru was pressed for time, so they had secretly parked a helicopter at the academy ahead of time. On the aircraft, Rex Raptor pulled his cap over his face, folded his arms, and leaned back. Any reporter passing by who thought about asking a question immediately swallowed their words. When the helicopter suddenly dipped, Rex snapped his eyes open and glanced to the side. Noticing that the seat cushion in the cabin had shifted, he spoke up. "He's on. Let's go." "Huh?" The pilot was still a bit confused. "Let's go. To Domino City." "Right, yes sir." The pilot began starting the helicopter. Some reporters nearby noticed that the Funlo Corporation's private aircraft was actually taking off and looked over curiously, snapping a few photos at light speed. But when they realized the only person on board still appeared to be Rex Raptor, they didn't pay it much attention. Maybe the Funlo Corporation had a change of plans, or perhaps Rex Raptor had other business and needed to leave first. In any case, they didn't dwell on it. Several minutes after the helicopter left Academy Island's airspace, Rex finally adjusted his cap and glanced to the side. Hikaru's figure slowly materialized. The pilot, noticing someone had suddenly appeared in the back seat, nearly jumped out of his skin. Fortunately, his professional composure was decent enough. He only let the helicopter swerve for a moment before steadying it. Invisibility? So that's your escape trick. Pretty impressive, but that kind of ability won't work on a real duelist. Rex told Hikaru. Don't even think about pulling stunts like that in a duel. Ha, of course not, Rex. Rex was only giving Hikaru a heads up. He'd watched Hikaru duel several times and naturally wouldn't doubt him. Sometime later, the helicopter landed in Domino City. The pilot asked Hikaru for an autograph. Hikaru signed it, then thought for a moment and asked Rex to sign it too. My autograph isn't worth anything. But if you add yours, wouldn't that make it the only card with both our signatures as Funlow Corporation representatives? Rex let out a short laugh and signed his name on the card as well. Hikaru then thanked the pilot once more before waving goodbye. Helping the Funlow Corporation transport someone at personal risk naturally deserved gratitude. After that, Hikaru followed Rex's lead as they made their way through Domino City. Surprisingly, Domino City seemed remarkably deserted. There were barely any cars on the streets or roads, let alone pedestrians. For the so-called City of Duels, it had an air of quiet tranquility, as if all was peaceful and well. Rex explained that this was because Kaiba Corp had shifted its strategy. Dimensional adventures and dimensional dueling were the hottest trends right now, so Domino City, as the City of Duels, was naturally the city most at the forefront of that wave. The vast majority of duelists here were actually off adventuring in various dimensions. Hikaru nodded in understanding. Just like old man Solomon Muto. In the original story, when Jaden and Cyrus visited Domino City on a school trip, they could freely drop by Solomon Muto's card shop and peer through the glass at legendary cards. But in this world, with all sorts of changes, Domino City wasn't so easy to just walk into anymore. Someone like old man Solomon Muto, famous for his getting kidnapped constitution, naturally required extra security screening. Especially since Yugi Muto himself was also traveling through different dimensions, bringing back all sorts of strange cards and leaving them in the card shop. That made it even more critical to prevent anyone from just casually taking hostages. Rex led Hikaru to a card shop and jerked his chin toward it, signaling Hikaru to go ahead. Hikaru nodded. Along the way, several men in black suits immediately approached. Hikaru held up a card for them to see, and upon recognizing the certification and image on it, they nodded and stepped aside. Hikaru knocked on the card shop's door. A wobbling old man with a starfish-shaped hairstyle opened it with his hands behind his back and immediately said, "So you're the kid Joey was telling me about?" The moment that sentence ended, Hikaru suddenly heard an enormous crash. Aha! Rex Raptor's voice rang out from behind Hikaru. Hikaru and Old Man Solomon both looked toward the road. The men in black stood aside with utterly baffled expressions, and from not far away, a green figure came charging at full speed. Rex spun around and tried to flee, but before he'd taken more than a few steps, the figure closed the distance, swept his left foot out to trip Rex, slammed him to the ground, then locked his right arm around Rex's neck while bracing his left hand into a crossguard, and pinned one of Rex's legs with his right leg. Rex was forced to the ground in an instant, howling. Hikaru's pupils contracted slightly. The figure wore a green jacket and looked quite solidly built. Joey. Rex Raptor panicked completely for the first time in his life. Let go. This is the first time I've ever seen you this rattled, senior. Tiara materialized beside them to watch the show. If I let you go, you'll just run away. The amber-eyed man shouted at the top of his lungs. Then disappear without a word for another decade. You've been hiding from me all these years, haven't you? Cough, cough. Rex struggled desperately, slapping at him. Seeing this, Hikaru rushed over. If you keep this up, Rex is going to suffocate. At that, Joey froze for a moment and quickly let go. Rex slowly got to his feet, coughing for a long while. From nearby, Old Man Solomon stood bewildered. Joey, what's going on here? Master. Joey greeted him. Thanks to you, I finally caught him this time. The moment he said that, Rex, still coughing and catching his breath at Joey's side, suddenly fainted and bolted forward the instant Joey's attention slipped. His physical conditioning was clearly not so poor that he'd actually be gasping for air. But Joey's physical abilities also far exceeded a normal person's. The instant Rex left his line of sight, Joey broke into a dead sprint. One fleeing, one chasing. Then, a voice spoke up. Duel. Suddenly, both men's movements gradually came to a stop. Rex slowly turned his head to look at Hikaru, blinking in confusion. What did you just say? Rex, I said duel. Aren't duelists supposed to settle things through dueling? Joey's eyes lit up the moment he heard that, and he thrust a big thumbs up toward Hikaru. He's right, Rex. Let's duel, you and me. Joey grinned, his teeth gleaming white as if they were literally shining. A duel? Me and Joey? Rex looked at Joey, and for a moment, he actually hesitated. Over the past decade and more, it had been a very long time since he'd felt fear. Rex Raptor, a man who had survived by dueling, found himself afraid of a duel once again, just like 10 years ago. Rex, you decided to keep moving forward so you could help me find more opportunities and meet more legendary duelists. If you hesitate now, wouldn't that be a waste? Hikaru called out from a distance. Right now is probably the best chance you'll ever get. The chance to say goodbye to your past once and for all. You little punk. Rex took a deep breath. Why do you always have to be so smooth with words? But he had to admit it. What Hikaru said always had its reasons and logic, and more than that, it carried his own convictions. Joey laughed a couple of times. So what do you say, Rex? Surely you're not going to let a kid younger than you show you up. Rex knew he couldn't run anymore. If even Hikaru was saying this, there was no escaping. After all, if Hikaru joined the chase too, he'd never get away no matter how fast he ran. He thought it over, then strapped on his dual disc. The old model dual disc activated automatically, extending before him like a blade. On the other side, Joey extended his left hand forward. A circular mechanism that had been fitted to his arm at some point unfolded on its own, flickering with a dark light before transforming into a sleek, black next-generation dual disc that automatically shuffled and cut his deck. Duel, X2. Two voices rang out simultaneously, calm yet carrying a spark of fire. Rex Raptor, LP, 4000. Joey Wheeler, LP, 4000. Chapter 537, Legend Reappears. The duel officially began. A few duelists still in the city of duels noticed a duel starting. Most were about to take a passing glance and carry on with their business. But then someone shouted Joey, and suddenly the veteran duelists who hadn't planned on watching came flooding over, calling their friends along. Hikaru stood in front of the card shop alongside Solomon Muto. The old man had wanted to chat with Hikaru, but seeing a duel start, he wasn't in a rush. Since Hikaru was the one who suggested it in the first place, they simply stood together and watched. The first turn went to Rex Raptor. He glanced at his hand, then looked at his opponent. Over the past decade, he'd grown considerably taller. While he still hadn't caught up to Joey Wheeler's height, he no longer had to crane his neck upward like before. Only now, the gap between them couldn't even be called looking up. 10 years. From living on the streets, digging through trash and scrounging for scraps, to barely clawing his way back to respectability as a sponsored duelist for the Dinosaur Corporation. He'd taken many wrong turns and wasted a lot of time. Joey was different. After graduating, that guy had entered the professional dueling circuit, and it wasn't long before he carved his way through the competition. He became a genuine professional dueling legend, a bona fide top 3 duelist in the world, one of the strongest duelists alive. Rex was just one of many commercial, hired duelists. Joey's commercial empire, on the other hand, was like a tidal wave. The gap was enormous. But still, when the two of them stood across from each other in a duel again, Rex couldn't help feeling a surge of excitement. A familiar impulse, one he could never forget, slowly rose within him. He wanted to win. No matter what, he wanted to beat Joey. Even if it meant giving his life, even if it meant selling his soul to a devil, or abandoning every card he'd ever held. He shook his head clear. Who's his opponent? For Joey to actually step up himself. It's been years since anyone's seen Joey duel. A number of duelists gathered at a distance, watching the match from afar. When they finally saw the opponent, it all made sense. So that's who it was. Rex Raptor. While plenty of so-called legendary duelists were riding on unearned reputations, this man and Joey genuinely had a lot of history. This duel could truly be called a revival of legends. Is that your senior? Solomon hunched over and asked Hikaru. Hikaru nodded. He's guided me down many paths in my work, helped me out of a lot of trouble. Even this visit to you was his recommendation. Ho ho ho. Rex, eh? Solomon chuckled and didn't press further. Go for it, Rex. Hikaru cheered him on. Some duelists, surprised to hear someone cheering for Rex Raptor, looked over curiously. A few of them recognized Hikaru and were taken aback. Rex heard Hikaru's shout and took 2 deep breaths. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Ever since Hikaru had defeated Weevil Underwood, Rex had actually been gradually reconnecting with old acquaintances and had started working within the legendary duelist circle. That was also why he'd previously accepted a position from Kaiba and become a star duelist at the tipping point. On one hand, he wanted to keep walking the path of dueling. On the other, he genuinely appreciated the kid who'd helped him and wanted to do what he could for Hikaru in return. But even so, there was still one person he couldn't bring himself to face, and that was the man standing right in front of him. Joey Wheeler. One of the 2 people he'd never dared to confront. He'd always assumed he and Joey would never cross paths again. But when he heard that Hikaru wanted to visit and even challenge legendary duelists, an impulse he couldn't suppress made him dial that number. And now, Joey had clearly been waiting right here for him all along. My turn, draw. Spell card, Pot of Greed. He opened with a powerhouse card right away. Then, drawing 2 cards at lightning speed, he glanced at his hand and immediately played. Normal summon in attack position, Soleading Oviraptor. A dinosaur clutching a blue fireball, its head and spine ablaze with blue flames, charged onto Rex Raptor's field. Soleading Oviraptor, Level 4, Dark, Dinosaur, ATK 1800. When this card is normal or special summoned, I can take 1 dinosaur monster from my deck and either add it to my hand or send it to the graveyard. I add Ptitranodon to my hand. Oh ho! Ptitranodon, huh? Hikaru watched from the sideline with a grin. Then, I set 1 card. Turn end. Rex finished his turn at lightning speed. A pretty unremarkable turn. He's probably being suppressed by Joey's dueling aura. No, he searched, summoned, and set a trap. That's not as bad as you're making it sound. A few duelists exchanged their thoughts. Alright. Then it's my turn. Here I come, Rex. Joey saw that Rex had ended his turn just like that, showed not an ounce of tension or urgency, laughed, and drew a card from his deck. He barely glanced at it before playing it immediately. If you're gonna use Pot of Greed, then I'll use this. Spell card, Graceful Charity, activate. Draw 3 cards from my deck, then discard 2 from my hand. Joey drew 3, looked over his hand, selected 2, and sent them to the graveyard as data streamed into his duel disk. He swapped out his hand? Rex watched his opponent in silence. His own strategy hadn't changed much. Prepare on the first turn, set a trap that could counterattack, then go to battle next turn. For instance, right now, his face down was the classic torrential tribute, which could destroy all monsters on the field when a monster was normal summoned, special summoned, or flip summoned. Now then. Rex, let me show you some super interesting cards I've collected recently. Spell card, Law of the Cosmos, activate. What the heck? A question mark practically materialized above Rex's head as his body spun among the stars, utterly lost. This card name can only be activated once per turn. My opponent can select 1 trap card from their hand or deck and set it in their spell and trap zone. Joey grinned and called out to Rex. Well, want to set one? Rex shook his head, an oddly familiar feeling nagging at him from deep within. "Are you looking down on me?" he said aloud, while thinking to himself. Something that looks like a free gift at first glance is bound to have a follow-up effect. He wasn't falling for it. Huh? Why would you give the opponent a free trap? Exactly. Isn't that weird? What's even weirder is that Rex Raptor actually turned it down. A free card, just like that. Several onlooking duelists murmured in confusion. Seeing this, Joey laughed and explained. Law of the Cosmos effect: if the opponent sets a card, I special summon one Jinzo from my deck. If they don't set one, I add one Jinzo, or one monster that specifically lists Jinzo in its text, from my deck to my hand. I see. So he can special summon Jinzo directly? That monster completely locks down all trap cards on the field. No wonder he wasn't worried about letting the opponent set one. As expected of Joey. Joey didn't pay the spectators any mind. He simply took a monster from his deck, adding it to his hand and displaying it. The card I'm adding is the level 7 Menacing Jinzo. When either player possesses a trap on the field or in the graveyard, I can special summon this card from my hand. This special summon card becomes level 6 until the end of the turn. Joey pointed to his own graveyard. And right now, there is indeed a trap card in my graveyard. Rex clicked his tongue. He could see the color of the card Joey revealed from his graveyard. Then, a greenskin android with folded arms took its place on the field. The Menacing Jinzo, level 7, Dark Machine, ATK 2400. Law of the Cosmos. Jinzo? Rex stared at this monster, and couldn't help but lose himself in memory. 10 years ago, during Duelist Kingdom, he had dueled against Esper Roba. Back then, he hadn't understood what was happening and had genuinely believed the other person possessed psychic powers, that he could duel by reading information from the cosmos. In reality, Esper Roba had his younger brothers secretly peek at the opponent's deck for him. That was why he had lost to that person back then. Regardless of any of that, Rex Raptor had lost to Esper Roba at that time. The trump card monster Roba had used was none other than Jinzo, and Esper Roba had also claimed he could communicate with the cosmos. He quickly shook his head clear. I activate my facedown card, the trap card, Torrential Tribute. Destroy all monsters on the field. It seemed this Jinzo was just a different form of the original, without the ability to lock down trap cards, so he should activate it while he had the chance. Then, Chain Activate. Joey Wheeler thrust his fist forward. During either player's main phase, I tribute this card to activate its effect. I special summon one Jinzo from my hand or graveyard. After that, I can destroy all trap cards on my opponent's field. Ugh. Rex Raptor groaned inwardly. Bad call. Joey let out a smug laugh, jutting out his chin toward Rex as he said, See that just now? What I sent to the graveyard was a trap card and a Sangon. I sent the threatening Jinzo to the graveyard, then revived the Jinzo from the graveyard. BZZT BZZT BZZT. A surge of electricity crackled through the air, and the classic greenskin cyborg replaced the newer, more advanced model, appearing on Joey's field. Jinzo. Level 6. Dark Attribute. Machine Type. ATK 2400. The torrent that had risen from the ground, ready to sweep away every monster on the field, was slowly brought under control by Jinzo's psychic power, gradually calming down, until at last it subsided and dispersed entirely. While Jinzo is in the monster zone, neither player can activate trap cards, and all trap card effects on the field are negated. Joey grinned, rubbing the tip of his nose with his index finger. How about that, Raptor? The me you're looking at right now isn't relying on luck anymore. Jinzo's trap-locking effect was incredibly potent. Any trap card, without exception, would be directly suppressed by it. It couldn't even be activated. What are you so smug about, you punk? The faint, grudging sense of guilt that Rex Raptor had somehow been nursing toward Joey Wheeler was nearly completely extinguished in an instant. As expected, he and Joey just didn't get along. He'd always been unable to stand the sight of that guy. But still, when all was said and done, he watched Jinzo standing on Joey's field. It had been so long since he'd had any real contact with the game, and seeing this familiar monster again after all this time, he found himself struck by something strangely warm, which made him feel like gagging, honestly. A grown man shouldn't get so sentimental. But he couldn't deny it. After all these years away, Joey hadn't used any particularly flashy cards in this duel. He was still using the same cards he recognized, the same ones he knew, as if they were still back in those days 10 years ago, still dueling over a single win or loss. And yet, he knew too. Nothing could go back to the way it was. Just like the first time he lost to Joey, then handed him Red Ice Black Dragon, and then Joey used that red ice to climb all the way to the top of the world. A gulf had already opened between people. A distance that hadn't existed before. After that, all he had thought about was beating Joey. He had gone so far as to join Doma, so far as to surrender his very soul to the seal of Orichalcos, all just to defeat Joey. And even later still, he and Weevil Underwood had together broken into Yugi Muto's house to steal from him. Whatever the case, people weren't the same people anymore, and 10 years had already passed. None of it could possibly return to the past, and there was certainly no such thing as a miracle cure for regret. Joey didn't say anything either. He pointed at the monsters on Rex's field and called out loudly, "Come on, Sangon, Jinzo attacks Soul Eating Overraptor." Joey's Psych Blast. Hey, that's not even the attack's real name. But even though he'd called the wrong attack name, Jinzo didn't hesitate for even a moment. A red glow ignited in his eyes, and a blazing crimson stream of psychic energy, like a beam that could cleave the world itself, instantly sliced Soul Eating Overraptor clean in two. Immediately after, 2 laser torrents surged through Rex Raptor's body as well, shaving away his life points. Rex Raptor, LP, 3,400. Pain? No, or perhaps, relief. After absorbing the damage, Rex Raptor felt as though something deep inside his body had truly, completely awakened at last. His eyes snapped wide open, and a golden light seemed to blaze within them. End turn. Just like that, Joey ended his turn with perfect calm, without even setting a facedown card. Though calling it calm wasn't quite right, his expression had grown increasingly resolute, as if he were waiting for something. That's it? Is that really Joey's dueling? It looked impressive at first glance, but the numbers are way too low. A group of duelists shook their heads in bewilderment. Oh ho ho ho. Looks like those two have finally finished warming up. And not far away, Solomon Muto watched the expressions on both their faces, unable to hold back a smile. Hikaru gave a slow nod as well. It seemed like it. The duel he had set into motion just might bring about an ending that would satisfy everyone. Chapter 538, Too Far Behind. My turn. Rex yanked a card from his deck. He glanced at the rest of his hand, then at Ptityrannodon. Good. This'll work. Normal summon, Animadorn Archosaur. A monster composed entirely of jade, looking less like a dinosaur and more like a crocodile, crouched onto Rex Raptor's field. When this card is normal or special summoned, I can destroy one dinosaur monster in my hand or face up on my field, other than Animadorn Archosaur. Then, I add one reptile, sea serpent, or winged beast monster with the same original level as the destroyed monster, or one evolution pill spell, from my deck to my hand. I destroy Ptityrannodon in my hand and add Beta Evolution Pill Ultranscendence from my deck to my hand. Boom! The little green dinosaur, wrapped head to toe in explosives, self-destructed in an instant. The next second, a strange evolution pill spun through the air and dropped into his hand. An evolution pill? Looks a bit peculiar. Ho ho ho, I see. Interesting, Rex. The old man chuckled warmly. Beta Evolution Pill Ultranscendence. The dinosaur duelist from the Fusion Core had used this card before. Hikaru wasn't the least bit surprised that Rex had obtained it. Rex paid no attention to the murmuring around him and shouted, Ptityrannodon's effect. When this card is destroyed by a card effect and sent to the graveyard, special summon one level 4 or higher dinosaur monster from the deck. I special summon a second Soul-Eating Oviraptor. With just one card, Rex had swapped his hand, special summoned a monster, and left the spectators who'd been so eager to critique just moments ago one by one falling silent, none daring to comment directly, instead watching the field in hushed awe. Soul-Eating Oviraptor's effect. When this card is summoned, I can take one dinosaur monster from my deck and add it to my hand or send it to the graveyard. I add Babycerosaurus from my deck to my hand. After Ptityrannodon, another tearful little dinosaur, fully prepared to self-destruct, appeared in his hand. He searched again, and got a card that sounds remarkably similar to Ptityrannodon? The duelists exchanged glances, recognizing the loop. No matter what kind of duel it was, the ability to loop meant the tactic was both viable and repeatable. Rex took Babycerosaurus from his deck, then glanced at his field. He now had an Animadorned Archosaur and a Soul-Eating Oviraptor on the field, while his hand had gained a Babycerosaurus and an evolution pill out of thin air. But even at this point, Rex Raptor still hadn't stopped his exploration. Activate spell card, Ground Xeno. Add one dinosaur tuner or one dinosaur normal monster from my deck to my hand. After that, destroy one card in my hand. I add the dinosaur tuner monster Jurakielo to my hand. Then, I destroy Babycerosaurus in my hand. As the plays continued, Rex suddenly dropped a bombshell that stunned every spectator in earshot. A tuner? At this moment, Babycerosaurus's effect activates. When Babycerosaurus is destroyed by a card effect and sent to the graveyard, special summon one level 4 or lower dinosaur monster from the deck. He's still special summoning. Is this for real? I guess that's what you'd expect from a legend. Only now did the watching duelists find themselves nodding in succession. This was what a legend looked like. I special summon from my deck, Double-Headed Dino King Rex. Double-Headed Dino King Rex, Level 6, Earth, Dinosaur, ATK 1600. Double-Headed Dino King Rex, that's an evolution of Two-Headed King Rex, isn't it? Joey looked up at the massive two-headed dinosaur, unable to suppress a flicker of excitement. Looks like you haven't been slacking all these years, Rex. Of course not. Only when dueling Joey did Rex absolutely refuse to concede. Two-Headed King Rex. In the truest sense, the card that had accompanied him from childhood to the present. He'd used this card in his duel against Hikaru too. It was his most trusted partner, one he would never abandon. Activate Double-Headed Dino King Rex's effect. When this card is normal or special summoned, I can target one monster on the field whose ATK is lower than the combined ATK of all dinosaur monsters I control, and destroy it. I choose the menacing Jinzo. Rex pointed at Joey's field. If he could destroy Joey's monster, he'd be free to attack at will. Joey only had one monster. Destroy it, and he'd be wide open for a direct assault. The surrounding duelists clearly realized this too. Joey appeared to have no defenses at all, leading them to believe he might not survive to his next turn. But then, at this moment, I also activate a monster effect from my hand. What? From his hand. Joey suddenly chuckled. Effect of Red Ice Soul. When the opponent special summons a monster, I can send this card from my hand or field to the graveyard to activate, special summon one Red Ice monster other than Red Ice Soul from my hand or deck. Red Ice. Rex froze. Come forth. Special summon, Red Ice Baby Dragon. Whoa! A small red ice black dragon let out a soft cry and alighted on Joey's head. Whoa! There it is! Red Ice Black Dragon. But why the baby form? Yeah, doesn't he have stronger, more invincible Red Ice Black Dragons? Red Ice Baby Dragon, Level 3, Dark, Dragon, Def 700. Red Ice Black Dragon. Back then, at Duelist Kingdom, he and Joey had dueled, and the prize was Red Ice Black Dragon. That was when the fates of Rex and Joey became irrevocably intertwined. He lost Red Ice Black Dragon to Joey. Perhaps that was the so-called beginning of a legend, and he was the one who set Joey's legend in motion. He shook his head clear. No time for sentimentality. He looked at his hand. No matter. Activate spell card. Beta Evolution Pill Ultranscendence. Tribute 2 monsters from my hand and or field, including a dinosaur monster. Special summon 1 level 5 or higher dinosaur monster from my deck or extra deck with ATK equal to or higher than the combined ATK of the tribute monsters. After this card resolves, for the rest of this turn, I cannot special summon from the extra deck except dragon, dinosaur, sea serpent, or WYRM monsters. It can special summon directly from the extra deck? What a powerful spell card! Joey watched the massive evolution pill materialize on the field and couldn't help but laugh. Are you saying you're still evolving? For power, for victory, of course I'll evolve. I send double-headed Dino King Rex, which can't attack this turn, and the 0 ATK Animadorned Archosaur to the graveyard. He looked at the Dinosaur King in his hand, and took a deep breath. After his duel with Hikaru, after watching Hikaru defeat Weevil Underwood, after being told by Hikaru that he could have beaten Weevil back then, Rex had embarked on many new changes. Working with the GX tournament, serving as a star examiner, and getting to know more dinosaur spirits. At the tipping point, he'd received the help of many brand new monsters. But he'd hit a wall. Stuck there, unable to move forward. Synchro summoning wasn't an easy power to master, especially after leaving the tipping point, where he couldn't even attempt it. But his contact with Hikaru had already pushed that stagnant needle forward considerably. Evolve into the most sublime form. My true soul. The 2 opposing minds that have accompanied me my entire life. Special summon. Level 9, Mighty Dino King Rex. Roar. The 2-headed dragon's body expanded wildly. Countless spikes erupted from the massive dinosaur frame, and the wings that had once been tiny now spread wide enough to blot out the sky, as if shielding all beneath from wind and rain. Mighty Dino King Rex, Level 9, Earth, Dinosaur, ATK 3200. The Dino King, huh? Ho ho ho. Solomon stood with his hands behind his back, nodding. Indeed, Rex Raptor right now truly had something of a Dino King about him. Unfortunately, Rex looked at the card's effect text. If this card was not normal summoned, flip summoned, or special summoned this turn, once per turn, you can target up to 2 monsters your opponent controls, destroy them. Though he had evolved, the Dino King could only evolve this far. But that was fine. He could still win. Activate Equip Spell, Premature Burial. Pay 800 life points to target 1 monster in my graveyard and activate this card. Special summon that monster in attack position and equip it with this card. When this card is destroyed, that monster is destroyed. Rex Raptor, LP, 3400-2600. Revive, double-headed Dino King Rex. 1600 plus 1600 plus 3200. Several nearby duelists immediately started discussing excitedly. He can bring Joey's LP to 0 in a single strike. Yeah, that monster has even higher ATK than Blue Eyes White Dragon. Could we actually see a legendary upset today? Incredible! As expected of a legendary duelist. He turned a single card into this entire board. Rex didn't pay attention to any of that. He took a deep breath, pointed at the little red ice across the field, and declared, double-headed Dino King Rex, attack. Boom! The small red ice black dragon was destroyed in an instant. At this moment, Red Ice Baby Dragon's effect activates. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, special summon 1 level 7 or lower Red Ice monster from my deck, and equip this card from the graveyard to that monster as an equip card that increases ATK by 300. Level 7 or lower Red Ice, could it be? That's right, Rex, it's him. Joey thrust his hand straight toward his deck. The card on the very top burst into a streak of light, transforming into a card blazing with black flames that flew into his hand. I special summon Red Ice Black Dragon. Roar! The cry of the jet black dragon echoed across heaven and earth. Red Ice Black Dragon, Level 7, Dark Dragon, ATK 2400-2700. Whoa, it actually appeared. The legendary Red Ice Black Dragon. This is the dragon of potential that stands alongside Blue Eyes White Dragon. Hikaru gazed from the distance. Dragon of potential? Dragon of burning blood. Still, he had to admit, although he'd seen Red Ice Black Dragons several times before, the one Joey summoned simply carried more presence, more power. No matter. Mighty Dino King Rex, attack his Red Ice. The Dinosaur King spread its twin wings, then lunged at Red Ice and clamped its jaws down, shattering it. Joey, LP, 4000-3500. Red Ice was destroyed. But it's fine. At least this way, Joey survived the turn. Right, as long as he still has LP. Ha! Rex suddenly grinned at Joey as if raising a toast. Sorry, Joey. When Mighty Dino King Rex destroys an opponent's monster by battle, this battle phase, this card can make a second attack. A double attack. 3200 ATK and it can attack again? This is bad. Joey's LP is 3500. If the Dino King and Oviraptor attack directly next. Ha, Rex, Joey suddenly broke into a smile. Does this situation look familiar to you? Back then, with Tyrant Dragon, it was the same thing, wasn't it? Tyrant Dragon? Joey's words sent Rex's mind hurtling back to that moment. Back during the Doma incident, he joined Doma and used the power of the Seal of Orichalcos to grow stronger, trying to defeat Joey. That was when he summoned Tyrant Dragon, destroyed Red Ice in battle, then used a trap to revive it, and used Tyrant Dragon's effect to attack again. Attack again, revive Red Ice. Could it be? Red Ice Retro Dragon's effect, activate. When a level 7 or lower Red Ice monster I control is destroyed by my opponent's attack or card effect and sent to the graveyard, I can special summon this card from my hand in defense position, and special summon as many of those destroyed monsters as possible in the same battle position they were in when destroyed. Then, Red Ice Baby Dragon's effect activates. When this card equipped to a monster is sent to the graveyard. Add one level 1 dragon monster from my deck or graveyard to my hand. I choose Black Metal Dragon. Red Ice Retro Dragon, level 4, Dark Dragon, def 1600. A monster flickering with the blue glow of time appeared on Joey's field. For a fleeting moment, Rex thought he glimpsed that familiar monster, Time Wizard. The key to victory from that duel long ago. Seriously, after all these years, you haven't changed at all. Joey didn't bother with pleasantries, just laughed heartily, gesturing wildly with both hands, his face pulling off incredible, inimitable expressions. Then, Mighty Dino King Rex continues its attack on Red Ice. Sorry, Red Ice. For victory's sake, fall once more. Joey, LP, 3500-2700. So leading Oviraptor, attack Red Ice Retro Dragon. Oviraptor sprinted over to Retro Dragon, pounced, and smashed it apart. Battle phase ends. Phew, that was close. So close. For a second there, I thought Joey was finished. Joey managed to survive that brutal assault without setting a single card, relying purely on his hand. That's amazing. Truly a legend. Solomon watched Rex, nodding continuously. At his age, what he probably enjoyed most was watching a prodigal find his way back. His all-out attack thwarted, Rex looked at Mighty Dino King Rex. Next turn, Mighty Dino King Rex would gain its full power. At that point, he could effortlessly destroy all of Joey's monsters. However, just in case, he still needed to survive the next turn. So leading Oviraptor's effect, destroy double-headed Dino King Rex, and special summon Ptityrannodon from the graveyard in defense position. Ptityrannodon took the stage once more, tears streaming. Then, I set one card. Turn end. The trap card he set was the power given to him by the Jurak monsters he'd acquired along the way, Jurak Impact. It could only be activated while he controlled a dinosaur monster with 2500 or more ATK, and it would destroy all cards on the field. With Ptityrannodon in play, using this card should work out quite nicely. Even if Joey summoned a monster capable of overpowering Dino King Rex, it would simply be destroyed outright. That's great, Rex. He looked over at Joey. Joey was ruffling his own hair. I said that a guy like me probably has a hard time connecting with you through words, but through a duel, I should be able to. After you were swallowed by the power of the Orichalcos, I swore I'd save your souls from within it. Even though our relationship grew more and more strained after that, I really didn't expect it to be this long without any contact. He furrowed his brow, arms crossed, and said, honestly, I was a little worried, because I really don't get all that stuff, so I thought I'd put on a kind of show, using Jinzo, the legendary fisherman, Red Ice, Insect Queen cards I received from other people, symbols of the bonds and friendships between us. But, looks like you'd already started moving forward on your own 2 feet. Those words struck Rex Raptor right at his core, jolting him awake in an instant. That's right. He really had already taken new steps forward. Under the support of Hikaru, that kid. Maybe our relationship never got back to where it was before, but I'm still really glad you came out the other side. Because, duelists like us were born to duel. 10 years, even the closest of friends can't stay by each other's side forever. After all, everyone has their own career, their own life's goals to pursue. Joey reflected on that for a moment, then said, if that's the case, then it ends here. Rex jolted in shock. It can't be. Too slow, Rex. You woke up way too late. You've fallen so far behind, so far. Heh, you've been left in the dust. Rex. Joey's aura shifted in an instant. A howling wind erupted. Every onlooking duelist was driven back by the tempest. No, that wasn't a tempest. That was presence. Hikaru, witnessing this, felt something like a faint shiver. His heart was pounding wildly. Excitement. An intense, almost frenzied excitement, he could feel it, a thrill impossible to put into words beating inside his chest. More intense than the wave of light. More intense than Kaiba 10 years ago. Far more intense. A true legend. Not one of those I dueled a legend and became a legend duelist types, a legend in the truest sense of the word. My turn, draw. He drew a card, glanced at it, and immediately played it. Normal summon Metal Illusionist. What is that? Every spectator cried out inwardly. Hikaru's eyes went wide. Metal Morph. When this card is normal or special summoned, I can set one Metal Morph trap card from my deck face down on my field. If Max Metal Morph exists in my graveyard, I can also draw one card. Metal Morph? Rex remembered, that was the trap card that supported Red Ice. When did he? Ah, right. That trap, the one he showed at the start, the trap used to special summon Jinzo. Joey set a card face down, drew a card, then played another, not done yet. Send one face down card I control to the graveyard, special summon this card. Red Ice Metal Claws Dragon. A red ice black dragon with steel claws over both hands descended from the air and landed on Joey's field. Red Ice Metal Claws Dragon's effect: when this card is normal or special summoned, if Max Metal Morph exists on my field or in my graveyard, I can add one Metal Morph trap from my deck or graveyard to my hand. I add the trap from my graveyard to my hand, then set it. Well, want to respond to the set card? Rex was a little confused. If it was only this much, there was absolutely no need to use a counter, because destroying everything on his own field at this moment would be more loss than gain. His side had the higher ATK. Then, activate trap card. Max Metal Morph. Huh? What? Wasn't that just set this turn? Why yeah. Isn't that against the rules? That's completely illegal. But Joey-san doing it must mean he has a reason. Quiet. It's simple enough to understand, it's a monster effect. Hikaru cut across the spectators' cries from the side. Ha, that's right. Joey nodded at Hikaru. While Red Ice Metal Claws Dragon is on the field, Metal Morph traps that were set this turn can still be activated. Unbelievable. That's strong. Absolutely outrageous. Joey didn't dwell on it and continued, Max Metal Morph. Tribute 1 face-up monster I control to activate. Special summon 1 monster whose name is stated on Max Metalmorphous card text that cannot be normal summoned, from my hand, deck, or graveyard. After that, I can treat this card as an equip card equipped to that monster, granting ATK in def plus 400, cannot be destroyed by spell or monster effects, opponent cannot target the equipped monster with spell or monster effect. I upgrade Red Ice. Ding ding ding. Steel was ferociously bolted onto Red Ice, piece by piece. An iron dragon, armored to the teeth in the most literal sense, descended slowly. Red Ice Black Full Metal Dragon Level 8 Dark Machine ATK 3400 3800. 3800. That surpasses the Dino King. And it's far beyond Blue Eyes White Dragon. Rex swallowed. Activate trap card, Jurak Impact. I can activate this when I control a dinosaur monster with 2500 or more ATK. Destroy all cards on the field. Self-destruction? He's going to blow everything up. But then his own field is wiped out too. No, this is actually a good thing. Because if Baby Ceresaurus on his side gets destroyed, he can special summon another monster. The watching duelists buzzed with commentary about this development. Only Hikaru knew. The moment Metalmorph resolved, the game was already over. Sorry, Rex, Red Ice Black Full Metal Dragon's effect. When the opponent activates a card effect, I can negate that activation. The trap card had just flipped and then froze in place. The dinosaur meteor that had been gathering power in the sky vanished in an instant. It can't be. Rex Raptor was completely stunned. Joey looked toward Red Ice. Red Ice let out a roar. The black dragon represented burning blood. After that effect resolved, he could inflict damage equal to the ATK of one of the opponent's attack position monsters. That would be 3,200 points. But he really disliked burning blood effects. Rex, it's time for the last card. In an ancient legend, there was a legendary sword saint who had defeated countless spirits. But after becoming invincible, he grew lonely, and so he armored himself in heavy steel. A sword saint? That's right, the final trump card I used in that duel. The Sword Saint reborn as a phoenix. I equip spell card Dark Dragon Tribe's Claw to Red Ice Black Full Metal Dragon, then banish the equipped card to activate. Special summon, Immortal Phoenix Gearfried. A towering sword saint clad in pure white armor, wreathed in flames, slowly strode forth from a summoning circle blazing like a fireball. Immortal Phoenix Gearfried. Level 9. Fire. Warrior. ATK 3000. The exact same ATK as Blue Eyes White Dragon. Ho ho. Solomon stood with his hands behind his back and explained, the Phoenix Gearfried can banish equip spell cards from the field or graveyard to special summon himself. Joey picked up another card, equip spell card, Phoenix Gearblade, equip it to Gearfried. Gearfried, 3,300. At the start of Gearfried's attack, I can equip one monster my opponent controls as an equip card that increases my ATK by 500. That little baby Ceresaurus over there is rather pitiful. I'll have Gearfried attack your soul-eating Oviraptor, and equip baby Ceresaurus along the way. Gearfried, 3,800. The blazing sword saint cleaved down on the dinosaur burning with blue fire. Rex Raptor stretched out a hand, bracing himself against the impact. Rex Raptor, LP, 2,600. Then, Red Ice Black Full Metal Dragon, attack. 3,800 to 3,200 equals 600. Exactly. Rex took a deep breath. Was the gap between himself and Joey really this vast? He felt a flash of anger, and a flash of regret for wasting so many years. But at the same time, he felt a surge of excitement. Fine then, Joey. Just you wait. Wait for me. I will absolutely beat you with my own strength, with the dueling philosophy I've rediscovered from the ground up, I'll beat you completely. That day is not far off. Boom! The black flames fell. Rex Raptor, LP, 600. Chapter 539, Card Drawing and Arrangement. The duel ended. Joey scratched the back of his head and walked over to Rex, looking sheepish. Since becoming a legendary duelist in every real sense, it had been a long time since he'd felt this awkward. Perhaps only something like proposing would be more embarrassing. He extended his hand toward Rex. Rex shook his head, looked up, and grasped Joey's hand, letting himself be pulled to his feet. Finally, after years apart, instead of going their separate ways, the two clasped hands tightly. Next time, I'll definitely beat you. Ah, too naive, Rex. Right now, there's a full 10-year gap between you and me. Oof. Rex refused to back down. Dimensional travel. Because of dimensional travel, duelists grow much faster than before. I'll catch up. Just you wait. Joey and Rex held each other's gaze for a long while. Finally, Joey said, "Yeah. I'll be waiting." He knew that Kaiba would eventually hold a cross-dimensional KC Cup, one that the strongest humans and spirits from all worlds could enter. Though he and Kaiba still didn't see eye to eye, he knew Kaiba would definitely invite him. He would look forward to it. Look forward to Rex standing on the real stage, dueling him once more with the cards they loved. After a minute or two of emotional reunion, Joey cheerfully called out to Rex, dragged him along while shouting "Master" at Old Man Solomon, and marched into the card shop. The surrounding duelists wanted to approach Joey for a chat and get on his radar, but seeing them disappear into the shop, they naturally couldn't follow. A handful of duelists stuck around to wait for Joey to come out. The majority, with their own work and their own dimensions to explore, reminisced briefly about the legendary duel, then hurried off. Old Man Solomon Muto's card shop looked pretty much like what Hikaru remembered. Display cases, card packs, and all sorts of peculiar collectibles. In his youth, Solomon had been an incredibly skilled gambler, later dubbed the legendary gambler by those who came after, and there were even cards modeled after him. After that, the old man had reinvented himself as an adventurer and collector, a genuine world-class collector. As a duelist, Solomon wasn't the type to chase power. Instead, he loved collecting all kinds of weird and wonderful cards, then reveling in his collection. In the original story, he was the one and only person to assemble all 5 pieces of Exodia the Forbidden One through sheer luck. Beyond that, he'd also collected all manner of bizarre cards, like gathering 2 token monsters made of stone, then assembling 3 cards from the Ancient series just to special summon Ancient Dragon. The dragon's ATK and effects were admittedly comical, but he didn't mind at all, because all he wanted was to show off his collection to his old friends. Put simply, he was the kind of person Hikaru's past life would have encountered on the ranked ladder of various dueling apps. Someone who built decks capable of pulling off incredibly flashy combos that only succeeded 1 time out of 100. Terrible win rate, but absolutely spectacular when it worked. Perhaps influenced by Solomon, this world's Joey seemed to have developed a collecting habit too. After catching up with Rex and realizing there wasn't much left to talk about, he pulled out cards he'd originally planned to use in the duel but hadn't played since Rex had already moved forward. Ta-da! The Legendary Fisherman 2 and 3. See this? Fisherman 3 can banish all of the opponent's monsters, can't be destroyed by battle or effects, and is unaffected by spells and traps. How would you deal with this? And this one, Ultimate Insect Queen. Skip that one, I've seen it. GUH. Then how about this? Don't be shocked when you see it. Heh, what could possibly shock me? But as he said that, Rex froze. Because Joey pulled out a card he hadn't expected at all. Serpent Knight Dragon. Joey chuckled and pushed the card in front of Rex. Rex picked it up, slightly dazed. This card. The card you lost to Esper Roba back then. Joey leaned back, elbows resting on the chair. Dimensional travel is dangerous. Take this with you. The evolved Serpent Knight Dragon? Rex hadn't expected Joey to have prepared even this before coming to see him. Heh, don't come crying to me when you lose because of it. Although he'd already formed a connection with the Jurak spirits and had even received an invitation to apparently travel to the dual terminal spirit world, meaning he planned to study synchro summoning in depth going forward. He still loved Buster Blader as a card. Joey waved his hand dismissively. Then he reached into his jacket again and produced another card, placing it in front of Hikaru. Hikaru blinked. I get one too. He looked at the card, then jolted in surprise. Salamandra, the Flying Flame Dragon. A support card for Flame Swordsman. When sent to the graveyard, it could add one Salamandra spell or trap card directly from the deck to the hand. The first could directly fetch Salamandra Fusion, and the second could retrieve Salamandra with Chain. Both were cards Hikaru owned but had no easy way to search. Thank you for everything. Joey didn't explain much, simply offering this card as a gift of gratitude to Hikaru. He knew that if not for Hikaru, Rex Raptor would never have set foot in Domino City again. It was because Hikaru, like a ray of light, had illuminated the dead-end road that Rex Raptor's life had been heading down, allowing him to stride forward once more. Regardless of what Rex thought, as a friend, Joey was genuinely happy. Take it. Rex glanced over and spoke up. After all, isn't this why you came here in the first place? Hikaru thought about it and agreed. He nodded, thanked Joey, then picked up the card and put it away. After that, Joey didn't linger with them for long. He stood up, said he had business to attend to and unfortunately couldn't stay to catch up further with Rex. He needed to head to the next dimension and left in a rush, clearly pressed for time. In the midst of a packed schedule, he'd carved out time to see an old friend, only to be unable to stay long because of how busy he was. But that was just the nature of duelists. After one duel, Rex already understood everything he needed to. No matter. As long as he caught up to Joey, there'd be plenty of time to settle the score. And the simplest way to do that, of course, was, Gramps, I want to buy some card packs. Rex didn't hesitate for a second before shouting at Old Man Solomon. Ho ho ho, you two came to the right place. The old man broke into a grin. What I've got here are super deluxe card packs assembled from several dimensions. These aren't some interdimensional clearance goods, you know. He brought out several card boxes. Hikaru and Rex bought them all in one go. Money wasn't an issue. However, compared to Rex, who immediately tore into the boxes on the spot, Hikaru was much more composed, simply putting the boxes away. Given his and Tiara's luck, expecting to pull powerful singles or support cards from opening packs was about as realistic as expecting super polymerization to spontaneously generate a second copy of itself tomorrow. Obviously, he'd bring them back to Duel Academy and let Lulu and Serena open them. Under the noble pretense of letting them see what's inside the finest card boxes from this dimension's peak. You're clearly just hoping your students' ridiculous luck will conjure up powerful cards for you, aren't you? Tiara teased. What else? What if he opened them himself and they all turned out garbage? Rex opened packs for a while, sorted out a few cards that were useful to him, then put them away. Say, you two. You both want to get stronger, right? After watching Rex finish opening his packs, and noticing he showed no particular reaction to the few rare cards he pulled, the old man asked curiously. Both of them nodded. Rex's answer was simple. Now that he'd re-examined himself and realized he'd already been walking a new path ever since joining the corporation and especially meeting Hikaru, what he needed to do was cram in everything he'd missed over the past 10 years. Hikaru replied, of course. The pursuit of fusion is endless. Ho ho ho, then let me tell you a story. The old man clasped his hands behind his back, leaned on the counter, and began. You've both heard of Exodia, haven't you? The two exchanged a glance, each seeing surprise in the other's eyes. Of course. Ha. Then you should also know that I'm the first and only person in the world to have assembled all 5 pieces of Exodia. The old man boasted about his achievement first, then continued, and since you know that, you must also know that Yugi's Exodia was once thrown into the sea. The two exchanged a glance in silence. More than just know. After all, the one who had thrown Yugi's cards into the sea was Rex's own good buddy, Weevil. In any case, Solomon began with the Lost Exodia as his opening, and told the two of them a story. Cards thrown into the sea do not simply vanish without a trace. In fact, every card that has ever been abandoned or forgotten will eventually find a permanent resting place. There's such a thing? The two of them listened with curiosity. And that place is the world of the forgotten. There, the cards transform into ghosts and spirits. They build lives for themselves, and they curse anyone who abandoned them or falls into that world. Rex Raptor retracted his head slightly and said, "That sounds like a ghost story only little kids would tell, doesn't it? Old man, weren't you saying it was a story related to getting stronger? This doesn't seem connected at all." No. 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 Solomon suddenly broke into a sly grin, slid open a drawer, and produced a card from within, holding it up for the two of them to see. Exodia, the legendary defender. Rex Raptor's mouth slowly fell open. It can't be Exodia. And moreover, the fully assembled form of Exodia. Could it be? Hikaru had a sudden thought. That world is actually a dimension of spirits. Rex, hearing this, felt the fog in his mind clear at once, the logic snapping into place. So that's it. The dimension of abandoned spirits. Now everything made sense. So what had actually happened was, Solomon had discovered a dimension of the abandoned, and through some twist of fate, obtained a new Exodia? To be precise, it is the dimension of the forgotten. Solomon said cheerfully, picking up a card from the table and setting it down in front of them. Rex looked down at the card for a moment, then shook his head. Kid, you take it. I've already decided on my direction going forward, so I probably won't be needing these dimension coordinates. By now, both the Dino King and the Serpent Knight Dragon had returned to him. There was nothing left that he lacked. On the other hand, for Hikaru, who was pursuing a higher realm of fusion, chasing the ultimate fusion, there was no telling what he might encounter in a dimension like this. After all, the Forgotten, those kinds of cards likely harbored considerable hostility toward humans and ordinary cards. Hikaru's fusion path would inevitably pass through this stage, so it made perfect sense for him to go. Hikaru nodded and accepted the card without refusing, tucking it away. The Dimension of the Forgotten, HM. Hikaru was genuinely quite curious about what he would encounter in that dimension. After all, just going by the name, it was hard to say exactly what lay within. Rex thought for a moment more, then rummaged through the new cards he had just drawn and pulled one out, placing it on the table. Kid, I've made up my mind, I'm going to spend some time in a world called the DT Dimension. After I leave, the Funlo Company is yours to handle. The Dual Terminal Dimension? Hikaru's expression shifted to one of complete surprise. Bro, the place you're heading to is a little bit dangerous. But since Rex had already made his decision, Hikaru wasn't about to make it for him, and besides, from the look of things, Rex had clearly already earned the recognition of certain spirits from the DT dimension, and had been invited there. So after his initial surprise passed, he gave Rex a firm nod, then turned his gaze to the card Rex had slid over. Oh. Hikaru's eyes lit up at once. It's actually. On the card artwork, a female figure with mechanical claws fitted over both hands, wearing a short black skirt, and sporting a strange mechanical dinosaur tail, was locked in battle with something. Dinomorphia Theresia. This card doesn't quite fit my deck. More importantly, I get the feeling its energy seems to resonate more with you. Maybe this card also has fusion power hidden within it. Hikaru took the card and nodded. That's right. This was one of the rare fusion-type dinosaur cards, a card from the Dinorphia series. As expected of Rex Raptor. From a pile of chaotic packs, he had drawn a dinosaur-type monster with pinpoint accuracy, and a fusion-related one at that. Rex then waved his hand and prepared to leave. Clearly, he wanted some time alone. Hikaru watched him go, and only then turned back to Solomon, curious about the question he had originally come here to ask. Could Solomon help him arrange a duel with a legendary duelist? Ho 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 ho. Solomon broke into a mysterious smile. Well now, as a matter of fact, I really have found you a legendary duelist. Though Yugi gave me a hand with it. Yugi Muto helped find one. Hikaru was taken aback. Then who on earth could it be? That said, it will take a little time to arrange on their end, since that person's situation doesn't suit having too many people around. When the time comes, they should reach out to your company directly. Solomon dangled the secret with relish, raising a hand to shield the side of his mouth as if whispering conspiratorially to Hikaru. All I can tell you is that this is an exceptionally skilled, exceptionally famous duelist, one even Joey Wheeler once feared, along with their card. Oh. Hikaru's curiosity was instantly piqued. Then I'll make sure I'm ready. Chapter 540, randomly send 3 cards to the cemetery. The date Solomon gave Hikaru was the end of this month, roughly a week before the new semester. If nothing unexpected came up, once Hikaru had rested enough, he planned to make a trip to the world of the forgotten around mid-month to see what spirits were there, and whether any shared his way of thinking. Of course, those were all matters for later. Right now, the only thing Hikaru was curious about was what would come out of this massive stack of card boxes he'd bought. If Rex could pull a Dinomorphia card from these boxes, then what Serena might pull was almost too terrifying to imagine. Domino City wasn't like Duel Academy, where hordes of reporters lay in ambush trying to interview him, so the return trip was smooth. He only needed to take a boat back, and once he disembarked, Hikaru could easily slip back to the academy under cover of darkness. The fusion division was off limits for now. Every day, reporters camped out nearby hoping to intercept Hikaru. While he didn't mind giving interviews to help put Duel Academy on the map, the moment one reporter latched on, it would trigger a swarm of journalists and fans. Fortunately, Hikaru had more than one place to hang out. Even though it was summer break, Professor Growler could still open a classroom for them to gather in. Chaz hadn't returned to the academy yet, presumably still busy. But Jaden was in the classroom with Cyrus, dueling on a simulator. Ah, I lost again. Cyrus, since when are you this good? It's because you're terrible, bro. Cyrus couldn't help roasting him. When dueling on simulators or phones, Jaden's performance was absolutely unwatchable. His usual knack for drawing exactly what he needed vanished completely. Serena, on the other hand, remained an undisputed luck queen even when using these devices. Lulu was also learning to use this world's simulators for dueling. Since the machines didn't have data for her cards, she could only test with decks from this world. Although the cards were unfamiliar to her, her performance was surprisingly strong, earning praise from everyone around her. Cyrus, long time no see. What have you been up to? Hikaru noticed Cyrus, and found that the hidden animosity he'd once harbored toward him was gone. When it came down to it, Hikaru's negative impression of Cyrus had been entirely based on what the original story's Cyrus had done, some genuinely outrageous things. But this world's Cyrus hadn't done any of that. Quite the opposite, he'd performed admirably, especially in his recent duel against Zane. That had made Hikaru realize this world's Cyrus was nothing like the one in his memories. He was a duelist with his own ideas, someone who grew and changed with circumstances, someone with responsibility and resolve. There was no way Hikaru could keep judging him through outdated eyes. Cyrus still wore his purple uniform, which stood out distinctly at the school. Honestly, now that Hikaru thought about it, aside from Cyrus, there was basically no one left at Duel Academy's main campus still wearing purple. Oh, Hikaru. Cyrus noticed him walk in and waved along with everyone else, then scratched the back of his head. Because of your duel before, everyone saw it, right? I don't know all the details, but basically, you beat Professor Akaba, right? Because of that, things have gotten a lot better for the students in the combination division. I've been over there helping out the past few days. As the representative of the combination division, Cyrus had plenty on his plate. How to decide on a future direction, how to set recruitment targets, how to change the division's image in outsiders' eyes, and most importantly, how to bring back former friends who had left. These were all things giving him headaches lately. The silver lining was that since most of the attention was on Hikaru, the combination division hadn't faced much hostility. I see. That must be tough. Keep at it. Cyrus gave a small nod and another shy grin. He wasn't alone in this. The Amazonas sisters didn't concern themselves with administrative matters, but their fame was considerable. As the world's premier tag duelists, their draw was nothing to sneeze at. Beyond that, his good friend in the combination division's ace, Dennis, had been helping him all along. So even though there was plenty to do every day, Cyrus was in high spirits. Jaden excitedly asked Hikaru what he'd encountered in Domino City. Hikaru grinned, because he actually had something worth talking about. I watched Joey duel Rex. How about that? Hikaru did his best to mimic Joey's card-showing gestures, but sadly lacked the facial dexterity to pull off those legendary expressions. What? Are you serious, Hikaru? The two guys erupted in shock. Jaden beat his chest and stomped his feet, wailing about why he hadn't been there. Lulu quietly asked Serena what the deal was with Joey and Rex. Serena's eyes lit up, sensing another chance to show off her limited knowledge to her sister, and quickly whispered the explanation. A legendary duelist redueling the legend itself. Missing a scene like that, even if it was just an exhibition match, was a real shame. Honestly, the whole duel had been completely one-sided. Hikaru could tell Joey had been holding back, even mentally prepared to lose after showing off his monsters if that was what it took. It was only when he realized that Rex, with Hikaru's help, had long since moved past his old shadows, and that only lingering hesitation and doubt were holding him back, that Joey brought out the real deal. Though it felt like there was still plenty hidden beneath the surface, none of that really mattered. What mattered was that Rex had felt the gap, and it had reignited his drive. But regardless of the duel's outcome, Hikaru as a spectator had been incredibly excited. After all, seeing original series duelists, the OGs of the OGs, the very first duelists, compete at such close range had been genuinely thrilling. Even now, he still felt slightly dazed. Anyway, after that, I bought a huge pile of card boxes from Old Man Solomon's shop. Come on, don't be shy, everyone can try their luck. Hikaru flashed a generous smile and dumped all the card boxes he'd bought out of the emerald tablet, covering nearly half the table. Card packs from that legendary card shop? Jaden asked, buzzing with excitement. He'd been wanting to visit Domino City's card shop for a while now. If the GX tournament hadn't been organized on short notice, he would have put every ounce of energy into winning his second-year school trip duel just to pick Domino City as the destination. That's right, these boxes have everything in them. Hikaru recalled for a moment, then held up his hands as he told them, Rex even pulled an XYZ monster from these boxes. It was insane. There are even XYZ monsters in there? Even Lulu couldn't help being surprised. Though she was an XYZ summon user who did possess XYZ monsters, the reality was that even in her XYZ dimension, XYZ monsters were quite rare. Many students didn't have any at all. And in this dimension, a card shop's packs actually contained XYZ monsters? The old man said they're cards that Yugi obtained from various dimensions, Hikaru mused. My guess is Yugi traveled through other dimensions under a false name, picked up cards, then gave them to the old man as a personal hobby. In other words, these weren't the kind of cards put on display in Domino City shops to entice tourists. These were cards Yugi Muto had physically visited game shops across other dimensions to purchase. According to Solomon, Yugi had also bought all sorts of games from other worlds and left them in the shop too, partly as reference for future game design and partly to add to his grandfather's collection. Solomon was getting on in years. His body couldn't handle going out to collect things anymore, so Yugi gathered interesting items on his behalf. Whoa, as expected of my idol. Hearing the description, Jaden gazed skyward, lost in reverie, but his hands moved fast. He immediately grabbed two card boxes that looked reddish in color. He liked red. That's so sneaky, bro. Cyrus complained about Jaden's quick hands while picking out a card box of his own, curiously starting to open it. Lulu wasn't sure if she should join in. Serena simply grabbed two card boxes, plopped them in front of Lulu, and started tearing into hers without a care. When it came purely to luck, not a single person here could compare to Hikaru. That's right. Not one could compare. Because Hikaru's luck was rock bottom. Even Lulu, arguably the unluckiest of them, wasn't necessarily worse off than him. After all, Lulu's bad luck in the original story was limited to her life circumstances. It didn't mean she was any worse than the other bracelet girls in other areas. Jaden moved fastest. He opened 2 boxes and found nothing but commons and even normal monsters. But Hikaru didn't react. After being in this world long enough, he'd gotten used to it. In the world before he'd crossed over, Konami may have been devious, but in order to sell new cards, they either put effort into the artwork or the power level, so on average, each new format's cards were slightly stronger than the last. Hikaru believed that even the Tearlaments, unrivaled on Heaven and Earth in the era before he'd crossed over, would eventually be power-crept. Maybe one day they'd end up like his favorite spell card, Spellbook of Judgment, evaluated as outdated engine and not worth running even at 3. He'd always assumed Spellbook of Judgment would rot on the ban list for eternity, yet when it was finally freed, it barely made a ripple. That was Konami for you. But in this world, things were different. Whether it was some mystical factor or something else entirely, the vast majority of cards you could pull from packs were useless little trinkets. Hikaru's starting deck had been full of bizarre odds and ends for exactly this reason. It was because cards were simply too rare. Especially powerful, excellent cards. The moment someone discovered their value, forget finding them on the market. They'd be swept up without a trace. Just like Future Fusion. Even Professor Growler, with all his connections among professional duelists, aristocrats, and legendary duelist circles, couldn't locate a second copy. So in this world, if you wanted to pull strong or novel cards from packs, you either needed to be like Jaden, whose powerful bond with Winged Kuriboh and Flame Wingman let him raw pull Winged Kuriboh LV10 and Shining Flare Wingman, or you needed to be like Serena, who could pull a Fusion Curse creature Dark on pure luck alone. Jaden opened 2 boxes and was surprised to find a comic hero King Arthur. Ha! There are XYZ heroes too? But wait, the kanji is different. It's not the hero, it's a different hero? Jaden scratched his head, a little disappointed. He could meet the summoning conditions, but unfortunately, it didn't seem to be a hero. If you want it, you can trade one of your cards for it. Hikaru waved casually, not minding at all. He couldn't use the card himself, and Tiara probably wouldn't be interested either. Among his spirits, Flame Swordsman or Dark Flare Swordsman might like it, but the levels didn't quite line up. Nah, forget it. Jaden thought it over and shook his head. Mainly because he couldn't think of anything worth trading to Hikaru. If the Supreme King were still around and he could endlessly swipe cards from him, he could have offered some of his current cards to Hikaru as a trade and kept them as mementos. But that wasn't possible. So, never mind. Hikaru nodded, unsurprised. Most of the cards were unusable, but Hikaru now had far more places to put spare cards. He could trade them to Magical Scientist, use them as alchemy materials, or share a bit of life force with the sacred beasts. In short, he wouldn't carelessly discard or waste any cards. Lulu carefully opened a card pack. She'd actually been doing quite well at the academy lately. Outside of the Fusion division, Serena's reputation wasn't great either. Combined with Leo Akaba's defeat, plenty of people enjoyed bothering Serena. But Serena was a girl who preferred fists over words, so not many dared provoke her, and by extension, Lulu was also left in peace. The folks in the Fusion division hadn't given her any trouble either, and had even taken time to teach her how to sense spirits. She'd been feeling much more at ease recently, the panicked feeling in her heart finally fading. She carefully laid the card pack flat, pushed the cards down, snipped open the top with scissors, opened the flap, and slid the cards out. First card, Harpie Lady. A normal monster. Perfectly normal. But actually a rare card. She didn't think much of it and kept going. And then, the last card turned out to be Polymerization. Somewhat surprised, she looked up to hand the card to Hikaru. Hikaru saw this and smiled. Keep it. She tilted her head slightly. Since that card appeared in your hands, it means, Lulu, that perhaps it has some connection to you as well. Fusion has never been exclusive. Since you drew a polymerization, it's yours. Before you return to your own dimension, why not study a little at our school? Think of it like Alice in Wonderland. Enjoy life, enjoy dueling, enjoy a different direction of dueling. Hikaru spoke gently. Me? Fusion? Lulu looked at the card in her hand, then back up at Hikaru. Under his encouraging gaze, she carefully tucked the card away. At the same time, "Whoa! Master!" Serena exclaimed. What? Hikaru had been about to talk to Lulu more about fusion, but Serena's shout made him whip his head around. Everyone else looked up at the same moment. And they saw a card glowing with golden light. I've never seen this card before. Hikaru glanced at it, then broke into a grin. That panicked little girl in a maid outfit. Isn't that laundry? Dragon maid laundry. After his amusement faded, Hikaru felt a surge of pleasant surprise. He'd never heard of where the dragon maids had appeared in this world. He'd even asked around at the mountain and nobody knew. And today, laundry had appeared. See? Having them open packs was definitely the right call. Tiara, seeing yet another unfamiliar card appear, voiced what Hikaru was thinking. Serena's luck was truly something else. That wraps up this part of What If Fusion Deck User in a Different Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.